All right, looks like we are live, and I want to welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. My name is Donny, and we are here for the much anticipated sequel between Ian Chen and Kent Hovind. What are we debating tonight? We are debating the topic of evolution. Evolution is on trial. Gentlemen, let's do some brief introductions before we get into this epic showdown on evolution. Ian Chen, been a little while since you've been here. So
it's been 1 year.
To have you back. Yeah, it's great to have you back. How you been? A little bit about yourself.
All right, I've got a slide up. If you can, just one slide. If you can put that up, Donny. You guys can see that? All good?
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to take about 5 minutes anyway. Most of you probably kind of know who I am. The last time I debated Kent was about a year ago, so it's been quite a while. So I just want to start by kind of saying, introducing myself a little bit. So my name is Ian Chen, and that's not my wife. These are pictures of my wife. A little nod to Kent in his joke there. Firstly, I do want to thank Grayson from Base Theory channel for swapping his debate date with me. You can kind of consider this debate as the entree, and Grayson's upcoming debate with Kent as the main course and the dinner and the dessert, I should say. And Grayson, I'm going to do my best to try and soften Kent up for you so you can finish him off later in your debate and take it home. I do also want to thank Kent for his time today. I know it's been a difficult week for him with his best friend being arrested for 6 counts of kitty fiddling, so I do appreciate that he's taking the time
Ian,
to kind of
okay, I'm going to stop you there. Already we've gone too far. So Ian, you got one jab in there. From now on, we're keeping it strictly to the debate topic.
Sure. Yeah.
But real quick, Ian, and before you continue, Kent, is there anything you'd like to say in response?
Yes, that's an ad hominem. He's not my best friend. It has nothing to do with the topic tonight. So grow up, Ian. You're a doctor. Come on, act like one. Let's talk about the topic of evolution. What do you have for evolution, sir?
Okay. Thank you for that. So okay. So the other thing I do want to talk about is that the opinions that you hear today is that of my own and not the views of my employer. I also want to note, and I do thank Kent for recognizing this, is I do actually have a PhD in biblical studies from Rockville University that I purchased for $875. So if Kent calls me doctor, I will certainly return the favor for him. I do also want to state that I will actually accept Kent's definition or 6 levels of evolution. Whilst it's not the actual definition of what a scientific evolution theory is, I will accept Kent's 6 layers or 6 tiers or 6 definitions of evolution for the purpose of this debate today. Also, I want to say that I won't accept any assertions or statements that are not supported by scientific papers, and I especially won't accept biblical passages as evidence. Also, Kent likes to make use quotes and point to the Bible as evidence. To me, that is totally meaningless. For example, whether a global flood existed or there was Adam and Eve as the first humans is a claim from the Bible. It is not evidence of the flood, nor is it evidence that there were 2 originating humans. The Bible is the source of the claim. It is not evidence of the claim, and it is literally just words on paper. There is a couple other things I kind of want to quickly address because I know Kent will bring it up. The first one is Kent will no doubt ask sometime in this debate whether I am related to a lion or a tiger or grizzly bear or even the great American bald eagle. I want Kent to kind of show me, if he asks this question, any book or any paper that says a rock gave birth to a human. Whereas the Bible literally states that Adam was created from dust. And what is dust but really, 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 really small rocks? So I will admit that I share a common ancestor with a lion or a tiger if Rocky Kent admits that he is related to mud or even corpulite. So I just want to get that one out the way. The last thing I just want to kind of ask Ken is, he has actually stated many times in the past that he believes that because of the fall of man, mankind has become weaker and our genome has been degrading over time, and eventually humanity will head to extinction. Well, I do want to kind of point out to Kent that blonde hair and blue eyes is caused by a genetic mutation that means melanocyte cells can't produce as much melanin. And this changes the color of hair from dark to blonde, or in the case of eyes, from brown to blue. So my question to Rocky Ken is, will he admit that I, Ian Chen, am genetically more superior than he is, as it is clear that he has lost more information in his genome than I have? So over to you, Ken.
Okay, we'll consider that, Ian, a 5-minute introduction before we get into the main points of discussion for the debate. Kent will give you equal time, 5 minutes for an introduction. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, sir. I think he's shown clear evidence. He's already lost. He's nothing but ad hominem so far. Can't attack the subject. Yes, you do believe you came from a rock. The textbooks clearly teach there was a big bang 13.772 billion years ago, where a dot of near nothing or nothing exploded. It swelled out into the universe, and parts of it cooled down and made the Earth a hard, rocky crust. First, it was a molten mass. Then it hardened into a rocky crust, and it rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive. Yes, Ian, you do believe you came from a rock, and all the textbooks show that. I've got hundreds of them here. That's not the topic of the debate tonight. You are supposed to offer evidence for evolution. Where is it? Where is the evidence of any animal or plant ever producing offspring other than what any 4-year-old would consider the same kind? Dogs produce a variety of dogs, cows produce a variety of cows, but they're still the same kind of animal. But you guys have lines on textbooks connecting all of them back to a common ancestor. That's not science. You put these family trees in here and say the human and the bird are related, going back to a common ancestor with the reptiles and the ladybugs. Ian, are you related to a ladybug? Long ago and far away, of course. Of course you believe you are, because you believe in the dumb religion of evolution. And I'm here to help you tonight. I want to get you past that, where you can learn the next level, like, wow, there's a God. He created it. So my name's Kent Hovind. I taught high school science and biology and earth science and physical science and algebra, geometry, and trig for 15 years. I've been a Baptist preacher for 48 years. I believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. The only way this could happen is God had to make it. Somebody outside of time, space, matter created time, space, matter. Somebody created life. Life is too complicated to have happened by chance, coming from a rock 4.6 billion years ago or 3.8 billion years ago. It's just evolution is a fairy tale. It's an absolute idiotic idea that we all are related to a ladybug and a pine tree. This is not science, and a worm, I'm sorry. This is not science. My contention is evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the world. Never been a dumber idea. There's no scientific evidence for it at all. We have a science center and a museum and a theme park here in Lenox, Alabama. Come on down and see it. It's free. We'd love to have you. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Kent, thank you for that intro. Ian and Kent, we got the introductions out of the way. To the audience, please tag me with your questions. We will, as always, be having an audience Q&A where we get you guys involved. And I appreciate how engaged the audience always is. Okay, so we're just going to get right into basically the discussion, where we're going to go one point at a time, one topic at a time. Ian has slides prepared for this. And so, Ian, let's hand it back to you for argument number one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got several. Can you guys hear me? Yep, I'm off mute. I've got several arguments, but I think before I do that, I just want the audience to appreciate how different my worldview is and Kent's worldview. So I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. These are yes or no answers, but feel free to elaborate, because as I said, I just want the audience to understand that you have a position that is here, and it is totally different from my position. And I want the audience to kind of see that our views are totally opposite. So my first question really to you, Ken, is this. Do you believe, question 1, do you believe the universe was created by an intelligent being as opposed to creating itself by natural mechanisms? Over to you, Ken.
Absolutely, yes. Not possible any other way.
Yep. And like I said, just wanted to understand your views, your worldview versus mine. Question 2. Do you believe the Earth is around about 6,000 years old, or that it is much older, such as approximately 4.5 billion years old, which is obviously what I believe?
That's not a yes or no question, but I believe the Earth is about 6,000 years old. Yes.
Yes, great. And the last question, do you believe that animals were created according to their kinds rather than evolving from a common ancestor, which is obviously what I believe?
I absolutely believe they were created, and they always have brought forth after their kind. No exceptions.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Kent. So everyone in the audience, as you can see, both Kent and myself have 2 very different and divergent worldviews. So my best evidence of evolution is very simple, and is one that I will explore later in this debate, is that I will demonstrate to you today that Rocky Kent has no scientific evidence for creation. And as you have heard from his worldview and what he just articulated, by default, that means evolution is true. So if I prove creation is not scientifically possible, by default, evolution is true. And that will be what I will be exploring later in this debate. Ken, over to you if you have any comments on that.
You have got to be crazy. You think because you can prove that the Earth is more than 6,000 years old, by default, evolution is true? There's 1,000 other options in that. I mean, no, that doesn't prove evolution is true.
So
You're wanting badly.
Will you admit that if you can show that evolution is not true, then you will admit that creation is not necessarily true? That there are other options.
The purpose of the debate is for you to show evidence for evolution. I have always said the creation worldview is a religion, and you will never admit that you have a religion. Evolution is a religion, isn't it, Ian?
I will admit that evolution is a religion if I can get you to agree to sign a petition that will remove 501c benefits from religious institutions, or that you sign a petition that allows evolution belief to also get 501c benefits or being tax free. So we've got to put it in basically the similar kind of comparison. If you think evolution is religion, then it has to get the same benefits as other religious institutions. Can I get you to agree on that?
And then it's no longer tax supported, so you will no longer teach it in public schools and public universities? That would be wonderful. Yes, evolution should be removed from all public funded museums, universities, schools, should not be taught. We should teach science in science class, not evolution.
And we should not teach religion as well. Like I said, it's got to be a level playing field now. If you think that evolution is a religion, then whatever rules that you impose on evolution, you must accept that for religion as well. So, okay, let's not teach evolution, but let's not teach any religion as well. I mean, that's a level playing field, right? That's what you're saying. Have it the same.
Well, the bigger question is, should we even have public schools? But if we're going to have them, we should not give exclusive coverage to your religion and exclude all others. Right now, evolution is the only religion taught in schools is evolution.
Okay, so look, I think we've hit a bit of an impasse here. All I'm saying, Ken, is that if you say evolution is the same as religion, then everything must be the same. We don't teach evolution in public schools. We don't have churches. It's the same. You want tax exemption for your religious beliefs. We have tax exemption for people who believe in evolution as well. That's all I'm saying. It should be the same. So if you want to call evolution a religion, then give us the same benefits you have as well, or remove your benefits.
Well, the tax exemption doesn't go to the person who believes in religion. It goes to an institution. If you want to start a private school and teach evolution to kids who want to pay and come learn it, go for it. Then it ought to be tax exempt. You are right. But it should not be in public schools. We're diverging a long ways away from the purpose of the debate tonight, Ian, I think purposely, because you don't have any evidence for evolution, do you? Go ahead, present some.
So my point here is, will you admit that if you can prove that evolution is not correct, that by default creation is not it's not the only answer? So even if evolution is not true, you can't prove creation. Will you admit that?
Well, right. There could be several other options. Maybe people on Mars made it. So yeah, there could be other options. There's more than just two here. Okay.
As long as you admit that in this debate, if you can prove evolution is not true, that does not mean that your position is correct. In fact, your position could be just as wrong.
Correct. But your job is to prove evolution is true. That's the purpose of the debate tonight. So get started, would you please? Where's the evidence for evolution?
Yeah, no worries. And look, we live in kind of these kind of times where, we have to be kind of inclusive, etc. Now, I know you have said that you have if you identify yourself as a doctor, we'll call you doctor, and that's fine. Okay, that's fine. You can do that as well. I want people to know, I want everyone in the audience to know, because we live in these times, that I identify myself as a male and my pronouns are he and him. So just to clarify, what do you identify yourself? A male, female?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because we got an excellent audience, a lot of people today, but we've also got limited time. So we've got a few jokes in, we got a few jabs in, great. But now you're on mute, Ian. Now let's move only to the topic. Anytime I hear a jab or an unnecessary joke, even when it comes to Kent's name, call him Kent, not Rocky Kent. Let's have a professional debate. This is a formal debate. And so let's now move. We're 15 minutes into the debate. Let's now move strictly into the evidence. Starting now, go ahead, Ian.
Okay. Sorry I hurt your feelings, Kent. I'm happy to call you Kent if that's what you want. Please don't cry. All right, so before I kind of go to evidence, I do want to clarify some claims that Kent has made in the past. And the first one I want to talk about is distant starlight problem. So we know the speed of light. We know how long it takes light to travel in 1 year. If we see a star that is 1 light year away, we know it is 6 trillion light years away. The distant starlight problem is where if we see stars that are over 6,000 or so light years away, then logic tells us that the universe is at least over 6,000 years old. We have stars and galaxies that are over 6,000 light years away. In fact, the furthest galaxy is 13.5 billion light years away, meaning the universe has got to be at least 13.5 billion years old. So Rocky Kent does not accept much of the way that science has calculated the distance of stars, but he has said in previous debates that I have heard that he accepts the stellar parallax methodology. And Rocky Kent is correct. Using telescopes, we can only measure stellar parallax up to 150 light years away. But Kent does not accept the other methodologies where we know that a universe is 13.5 billion light years away. Obviously, then logic dictating it is 13.5 billion years, or at least years old. So look, I am not like Kent. I haven't taught high school maths and science for 15 years, and Kent has. So I would like Kent to kind of explain to the audience how he uses the trigonometric function to calculate stellar parallax. So over to you, Kent.
Well, trigonometry is very simple. Sine, cosine, tangent. There's three angles and three sides. I can give you a trigonometry lesson if you'd like, but you are correct. We cannot measure star distances using parallax trigonometry beyond a certain amount because the base of the triangle becomes so small. I'll show you a picture here. I covered this thoroughly on my video number 7, Creation Seminar Part 7, where we talk about the stars and the distance to the stars. We do not know the distance to the stars. They may be billions of light years away, but you're stuck with the false assumption that a light year is a time. A light year is a distance. It's like saying a Hovind minute. How far can Hovind run in a minute? Stars, the Bible says God stretched out the heavens, but viewing a star, let's see, when you look at a star from 2 different observation points, you can calculate using basic trigonometry, sine, cosine, tangent. I can teach you that if you'd like. So the distance can be calculated if you know the distance between your 2 observation points. In this case, with your eyeballs, you see two observation points a few inches apart, and you can calculate roughly in your brain distances to things, okay? Earth's diameter is about 8,000 miles, a little less than that, but 93 million miles is the distance to the sun. So the diameter of Earth's orbit around the sun would be, they call that 1 astronomical unit, or 8 minutes for light to get here. So the diameter would be 16 light minutes. Here we have 2 observation points in January and in June, both looking at a star, trying to calculate the distance to it. Using parallax trigonometry, if it was 1 light year away, that would put a real tiny angle. Earth's orbit around the sun is 16 light minutes across. A year has over 500,000 minutes in it. So if you want to measure 16 as your base and 500,000 as your third point, you got a real skinny triangle. I can do the math on that if you'd like, but that's about 8 1/3 miles, okay? I don't think you can tell exactly where you were 6 months ago, since we're not only going around the sun is traveling through the universe also, so it becomes a very complicated mathematical problem. But 1 light year triangle has an angle of 0.017 degrees. If that little yellow dot was Earth's orbit, not the Earth, the orbit of the Earth, it'd make a real skinny triangle. To measure the distance to a star 100 light years away, you're saying you can measure an angle of 0.00017 degrees. That'd be like keeping surveyors 16 inches apart and moving the third point 830 miles away. Get 2 surveyors with transits trying to calculate the distance to a dot 830 miles away. They're 16 inches apart. They don't know the dot's 830. They're supposed to tell me it's 830. Can they measure that? I don't think so. 2 surveyors in Pensacola, 16 inches apart, trying to measure the distance to Chicago with using parallax trigonometry. To go 15 billion is clearly impossible. They might be 15 billion. I'll give it to you. They're 200 trillion light years away. That doesn't prove the age of the universe. I don't know how you can get stuck on this. It's a distance. They could have been created that distance 2 seconds ago, okay? Parallax can measure less than 100 light years. This is what the normal textbooks will say. Using parallax trigonometry, we're very limited to less than 100 light years. Just Google it, okay? So how do they measure the star distance? They use a red shift as the third thing. It's a stretch that's about the closest star. So I cover all this in video 7, Ian, if you'd like to watch that. But I think the Bible says 17 times God stretched out the heavens, and that may be causing the red shift. So yes, I'll stand by my guns. I don't think it's possible to measure much more than 100 light years using parallax trigonometry, and even that becomes real difficult. So if you want a different method, so don't claim you can measure it with direct observation. You cannot. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I as I kind of said, I agree with you. It's about 150 light years from from the the papers that I've seen. Okay, I'm glad you have explained how the formula was calculated. I'm actually surprised. I thought you wouldn't know. But as you've kind of explained, this is the diagram and how we apply the formula. It's a tangent kind of function on trigonometry. I won't go into that because Kent has explained that. But I do kind of want to point out that that basically Kent agrees that stellar parallax is probably the most accurate way because it's based on actual observations. Everything else, whether it's redshift, supernova explosions, where we know the actual energy of the explosions, that we can measure how much the energy has kind of dissipated as we kind of see on Earth to kind of calculate the distance. I'm just assuming, Kent, that that's too many assumptions for you, and you don't understand, or you don't accept that. So we'll stick with stellar parallax. So in 1989, the satellite Hipparcos was launched to measure star distances using stellar parallax, using laser telescopy outside of Earth, and it could measure distances of up to 1,600 light years away. In 1990, the Hubble Space Telescope was updated with an update in 2009, could extend that measurement using stellar parallax to 10,000 light years away. And in 2013, the European Space Agency Gaia Space Observatory satellite measured star distances up to 30,000 light years. So this is methodology that Kent has said is relevant and appropriate. So stellar parallax, but we're using telescopes that are in space and not on the ground. Using telescopes that are on the ground, we can at most measure using stellar parallax 100, 150 light years away. Using satellites up in space, this goes to 30,000 light years away, which is already 5 times as old as what Kent thinks the universe is anyway. So over to you, Kent, to have any comments there on this.
Well, all of your arguments so far is to try to rescue the main ingredient you guys need for your religion, which is time. You're trying desperately to show that somehow we have more time. There's your pacifier. We got plenty of time for evolution to take place. You still haven't presented any evidence for evolution. You're trying to say you think the Earth is more than 6,000 years old, which has nothing to do with the argument. If it's trillions of years old, we never see an animal produce anything other than its kind. So you're not on target here tonight. The speed of light was 10 billion times faster at time zero. Do you believe at the Big Bang that actually not only the light, but the matter accelerated way faster than the speed of light, which is what the Big Bang teaches? The speed of light was apparently exceeded by a factor of 100. So your whole argument tonight so far on the distance to these stars is, you said it's 30,000 light years away. That's a distance, that's not a time, Ian. It's a distance. If it is 30,000 light years away, but light was going faster at the beginning, you're basing it today's speed of light, trying to calculate something and prove the Bible wrong. You're way off target, Ian. Get back on target. Where is the evidence for evolution? Scientists have admitted for a long time that the speed of light may have changed. We don't know what the speed of light is constant. Even if you are measuring those distances accurately, 30,000 seems like a stretch, but okay, you're still assuming the speed of light's always been the same. Nothing's reliable, not even the speed of light. That was known 20 years ago. Time varying speed of light solves the cosmological problems. The decaying speed of light. There's lots of articles on this. It's been known for 20 years that the speed of light is not a reasonable, it's a rubber ruler, okay? But even if the stars are 30,000 light years away and then you think that proves 30,000 years old, which it does not. But even if it did, that's not evidence for evolution. This article, Why No One Has Measured the Speed of Light. Speed of light is not about light. Cosmic uncertainty. Is the speed of light really constant? I mean, read up on it. There's plenty of information out there. So you're not giving any evidence at all. You're still trying to prove there's billions of years are available. I'll give you billions of years. Now, show me an animal producing anything other than its kind. That's the debate tonight.
Yeah, so
you're way off target.
No. So let me just clarify one thing. And Ken, I would agree with you, but if I did, then both of us would be wrong. So look, I said at the very beginning that I accept your 6 definitions of evolution. Are you now telling me that in fact your definition of evolution is only biological evolution? Because what I'm talking about,
for the purpose of this debate tonight, I would, if you want to do the whole thing, I think if I said I reserve the right to go back and say, hold it, you're not telling us where life came from, and you're not, okay? I'll get the 6 different definitions of the word evolution up here. You're trying to, let's see, debates right here. Okay.
Just tell me what your definition of evolution is. That's okay. I mean, I've always heard you talk about those 6 levels, and at the beginning I said I accept that. I'll take your definition and I'll argue from that basis. So are you changing your definition now?
No. I will still maintain there are 6 different levels or meanings or stages to the word evolution.
Yep. So I am
And
arguing evolution as per what you are saying then.
if
You
you
are
want
not
to
limiting
start,
it to biological evolution. I'm agreeing with
okay,
you here.
if you want to start with a living object, I will point out, Your Honor, that's 3-4 stages into this, but okay, start with a living object. Show me how any amoeba or a single-celled creature has ever changed into anything else. But I think I reserve the right to say, we have to go back and say, you don't know where time came from. You don't know where matter came from. You don't know where space came from. You don't know where energy came from. You don't know how life got started from non-living material. You'd like to skip all that. I know you would, and I know why, because there's no scientific evidence for
I'm
that.
not skipping it. I'm actually talking about cosmology right now. My example on distant starlight has nothing to do with your levels 5 or 6. It's really at the beginning where we're talking about cosmology now. I have said at the beginning, I accept your definition of evolution, and I will be arguing on that basis. And now you're trying to tell me that you mean biological evolution. Which is it, Ken? Just tell me, and I can argue accordingly.
Tonight, I'd like you to show evidence for biological evolution.
Great.
But I'm
So
not saying that's all there is to evolution. Tonight, I'd like you to show me evidence for biological evolution. Quit stalling. Come
great.
on, show it.
No, not stalling at all. And secondly, you are absolutely wrong when you say that light can be sped up. Those papers, and I know you're looking at articles, I haven't got it up. If you want to pull it up, there are 2 different measurements on the speed of light. There's the frequency. If you consider light as a wave, what you are showing is the frequency of the different photons moving up and down the wave, but the actual limit of the speed of the wave is constant. And that's when people talk about the speed of light, they're talking about that wave that's traveling through a medium. They're not talking about the frequencies going up and down the actual wave itself, which has been shown to be slowed down, 370 or 470 times. That's probably what you're referencing, but you're confusing it with the 2 different measurements of the types of light. And there is no evidence that light has been 10 billion times faster in the past. So clearly, if that's what you think, you can show me a paper. As I said, I'm not taking hearsay. I'm not taking biblical passages. If you make a statement that light is 10 billion times faster at the start, show me something that kind of shows that. Otherwise, dismissed.
You're still stuck on time. I'll give you billions of years. Show me evidence for evolution.
Okay, and I'll take it. So I'll talk about genetic limits here. So in the past, you have said numerous times that you believe that there are variations, and in this case, you're talking about what is it? Your number 6 tier evolution or microevolution or whatever you kind of call it. But you have said that there are limits that stops a kind from changing into another kind, and that's fine. So, and I'm not talking about limits where it's limited by physics. So you cannot have a pig that's as big as Texas. The bones and the structure of the material in the bones cannot support that weight. You can't even feed a pig that big. You cannot have a cow jump higher than over the moon. Obviously, it cannot propel its force stronger, so it overcomes gravity, etc. So I know you're laughing, but and I know you kind of use it as a bit of rhetoric. Those are silly limits. What I want you to focus on is genetic limits. So I know in the past that you do not believe that a primitive tree-dwelling primate evolved into Homo sapiens. You have said that. You have also stated that you don't believe that a fish fin can evolve into walking limbs as what evolution kind of states has happened. And you don't believe that a chimpanzee grasping foot has evolved into a human foot like such. You believe that there are limits. So my question to you is quite simple. Here is the genome for chimpanzee chromosome. Can you please point out which chromosome? I don't even need to know the detail. Just which chromosome does the genetic limit sit here that will stop a chimpanzee grasping foot to evolve into human foot? You have said there are limits. So show me where these limits are. That's the chromosome on a chimpanzee. Over to you.
Well, science, the word science means knowledge. What do we know by experimentation, testing, and demonstration? We know chimpanzees only make baby chimpanzees. I don't need to show the limit where it is on the chromosome. The observation from all of human history says chimpanzees only make baby chimpanzees. This is silly.
Pardon, when you say there are limits, show me the limits. Like, don't just, you're making an assertion without any sort of evidence at all. So when you say there are limits, and forget the rubbish physics limits that you keep on talking about, where is the genetic limits that proves that something can't turn into something else? Because you are the one that said it, not me. You're the one that stated there are limits. So show me the limits.
I don't know that there's a genetic limit. I know that all observation is cows make baby cows, and horses make baby horses, and humans make baby humans. You're the one who wants to. You're the one who believes you're related to a strawberry and a ladybug.
And
Is there a
related
limit?
to mud.
What?
You're related to mud, as I said before. I'll accept that I'm related to whatever if you accept that you're related to mud because you are created from dust.
I will accept the idea that my whole body is made out of minerals which came from the ground. So is yours. Are you made from anything? Are you made from anything special other than minerals that come from the ground? All the 92 elements.
Let's move this along. Homeobox genes are genes that we know regulate anatomical feature development. So I've given you a clue here. Here are the homeobox genes in the chimpanzee genome. Does that help you kind of point out where these limits are that stops the grasping foot to become a human foot? It's okay if you don't know. I'm just asking you. You've said there are limits. Tell me what the limits are. If you don't know, that's fine.
I don't think anybody could possibly know where it is in the genome. The genome is so complex, mind-boggling, and it's a code. That genetic code is like trillions of lines of information, much more complicated than any computer, and it somehow makes all the things, including the fingernails and toenails and hair and everything else. So where are the limits? That's a silly question. Where is the evidence, would be my question, of any change? You claim a grasping foot like a chimpanzee became a human foot, which would be a loss of information. It'd be nice to be able to hang with your feet. So we lost something there. The chimpanzees have one over on us. But no, that doesn't prove any relationship. Where is the evidence, Ian?
You don't know. That's my conclusion. You don't know.
Nobody
can
can show you what you're asking. Nobody can show the limit in the code.
Okay, as long as the audience understands that you are making a statement that you cannot prove. When you say that there are limits that stop something from changing to another kind, you can't show this, you can't prove it, you're just making an assertion. As long as people in the audience understands that, and it's okay. I might not know, you might not know, but the difference between you and I, Ken, is if I don't know, I say I don't know. I don't make an assertion and pretend to know something.
Oh, yes, you do. You believe, you said earlier related to something other than a human. Where's that? That's a statement. You made a statement. Do you believe you're related to a strawberry or to a ladybug? Ultimately, do you have a common ancestor with a ladybug? Go ahead and make the statement. Yes, I believe I'm related to a ladybug.
I have a common ancestor with a lion. I have a common ancestor with a tiger and a grizzly bear. Look, I'm not gonna play your game and choose a living organism that just sounds silly. Okay, but to get to your point, yes, I do have a common ancestor with a lion or a great American bald eagle.
You just made the statement. Where's the evidence for that? You're making a claim, a religious claim that you're related to, you have a common ancestor with a tiger or a lion. Where's the evidence for this, Ian? You just made the statement. The burden of proof's on you. You claim you're related to a lion, and you want me to pay to teach that to all the kids in schools. Where's the evidence?
So, Ken, I just want to ask you, what question do you think you're answering here? Because all I'm asking you is, you made a statement that you believe that there are limits. And all I'm asking is show me where these limits are. And you are just digressing to a whole bunch of totally unrelated, irrelevant kind of conversations. So, and I've given you an out. I've kind of said, if you don't think there are limits, just say you don't think there are limits and we can move on. That's all I'm saying. But you're the ones that have claimed many times that there are limits. And I do not accept the limits that you have given that are obviously physics constrained.
The limits, would any farmer tell you there are limits to how much milk you can get out of a cow? Yeah.
Correct. Physics limits. The size of the cow, the size of the udder, how quickly that cow produces the milk. There are actually limits that I can point to. So yeah, the cow jump over the moon. Come on, Ken. I've already said that. It's silly.
Today, the world's record cow gives 138 pounds of milk a day. Hamsters also have udders. I used to raise hamsters and sell them. Is it possible to get a hamster to give 138 pounds of milk a day? Cows can do it. Cows can do it, Ian. Can hamsters ever be bred to give 138 pounds of milk a day?
No, I don't want to make you sound silly here, but do you think there is a difference between a hamster and a cow? For example, the size? I mean, look, I'm not as smart as you. I'm not a doctor. Well, actually I am, but I'm not a doctor from like you've got. So I can easily see that the size of the hamster and the size of the cow is very different. When you ask me a question that's obviously based on the size of the animal, that's a pretty stupid question. I just want to kind of point that out, Ken.
You're the one who's claiming all animals and all plants have a common ancestor. If the hamster and a cow have a common ancestor, why can't we get a hamster give 100 pounds of milk a day? Is there a limit to hamster milk production?
Ken, are you not understanding what I'm saying there? I'm pointing out to you the physics limit. So you are giving me a small animal as an example versus a large animal like a cow as an example, and you're asking me, can that small animal produce the same amount of milk as a large animal can? I mean, can you not see that's a stupid question, Kent? Do I have
No,
to actually point this out to you?
I'm trying to show how stupid evolution is. These charts we teach the kids in school have everything coming from a protozoa, a single-celled creature. Does a single-celled creature like a protozoa or an amoeba or a bacteria have a limit? You believe it turned into a whale over millions of generations. So apparently there's no limit. If the amoeba can turn to a whale, why can't the amoeba turn to a hamster? And why can't the hamster give more milk to give 100 pounds of milk a day? Show me the genetic limit in a hamster, why it can't give 100 pounds of milk a day. Where's the
I'm just going to
genetic
go
limit?
back to the same question I asked you, which you've still not answered, and it's very simple. Like I said, you can just say you don't know. That's okay. There's lots of things I don't know as well, Ken. All right. So all I asked you was, you have said that there are limits that will stop a grass. Just take a fish that will stop a fish fin from evolving to a limb. Where's the limit to that? That's all I'm asking. You've just digress and push things on and start talking about this and that and whatever. I've just asked a very simple question. If you don't know, you don't know. That's fine. We can move on. Nothing against you. But all my question is, you have said there are limits to move from one kind to another, and I've used a specific example of a change of the kind, such as a limb of a fish or a limb of a chimpanzee or a chimpanzee-like creature. Where is the limit to stop that? That's all my question is. That's all I kind of want you to focus on.
The limit is apparently genetic because we never observe any fish limb changing to anything else. It's not
And where
science.
is it in his genes? Where is it in his genes? I put up the chromosomes here for both of them.
It doesn't matter. You're the one claiming it changed. You need to show me how it changed. I don't know where the limit is, which chromosome it's on. It doesn't matter. The fact is, fish make baby fish every time.
But what I'm saying is there is no genetic limits for the change. So I can't show you a genetic limit for a change when I don't believe there's a genetic limit for a change. As long as the information is there for it to change, it can change. And by the way, Ken, just go back to your previous point about the grasping foot losing information. That's complete rubbish. A grasping foot loses information because it can no longer grasp the tree and hang upside down or whatever the chimpanzees do. I agree. But the human foot is built for running. A chimpanzee cannot run as fast or as efficiently as a human. Is that a gain in information then? It's lost its ability to hang upside down a tree, but it's now gained the ability to run super fast and endurance for hours. Is that a gain in information? So your whole point about losing information and gaining information is a total non sequitur. Doesn't exist. So look, let's move on because I think you can't answer the question.
I didn't get a chance to answer that.
Yeah, go on.
You say the human foot is built for running. You mean like it may be designed for running? Like maybe are you admitting there's a designer who designed the foot for running? Is that what you're admitting?
Yeah, evolution.
Oh, good. Thank you, sir. You believe in God then.
You are welcome. You are, and this is my little kind of token nod to Donny here. So if you want to pull your SpongeBob, I've got my little Superman doll here for Donny as well. Yeah, that's great. Look, I kind of want to move on anyway because I don't think we're going to get anywhere here. I just want the audience to understand it was a simple question. Every time Kent mentions there are limits, ask him, what are these limits? And Kent basically admits that he either doesn't know or that there's no limits, and pushes the answer back to myself to demonstrate where are the limits that stops the movements. And I'm saying there are no limits. As long as the previous information is there for evolution to act on, it can act on it. And what I mean by that is you're never going to see a Pegasus where it's got 4 limbs and wings, but you can see birds where you've got the 4 limbs, but 2 of the limbs become wings because evolution acts on those 2 limbs and changes it from, claws to a wing. All right. So as long as the information is there is no genetic limit for it to change. Whereas Ken is saying there is, but he's not able to kind of point any out. So I just want to kind of point that out as well. Okay, I'm going to move on as well, unless Ken, you want to kind of close.
Yeah, let me jump in here. So this is basically point 2, maybe 3, depending on how we count them. I appreciate that response.
Yeah, I've called it 2, but
okay, 2, awesome. Kent, if you wanted to respond to that, and then Ian will hand it back to you to move to point 3.
Well, he's clearly mixing science with imagination. He believes there's no limit. You can change a fish fin into a human limb or something like that. That's his belief. He can believe that if he wants. There's no observation for it. Science is limited to what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. That's the standard definition of science. Look it up in any dictionary. Science, knowledge gained from observation, experiments that describes the world around us. Science is based upon what we can observe. Right here, science. I got more. Science means knowledge. What do we observe? We observe fish always make baby fish. They always have fins. We don't observe them turning into a limb. He says there's no limit. Well, That's his belief. He's mixing his religion with science. Science, well, we can observe. Evolution is not science.
And we
It's
have
a religion.
observed it. You can look at the fossils and you can see the different fossils where there's part limbs, part.
Finally, okay. So you're saying fossils are evidence that the fin turned to a limb. Is that what you're saying?
Fossils are evidence that there is a creature out there that has progressively more and more similar features to a limb and less similar features to a fish. So we have tetrapods out there where, the limbs are longer, but yet it has something similar to ankle bones that allows it to not just push on the land, but also the kind of flapping, kind of push against the water as well. Then progressively, we've got animals or fossilized remains of creatures that have these limbs getting longer and longer and slowly becoming limbs, like, arms and legs, etc. Yes, you've got tiktaalik up there as well. So we have, if you call that observation, we can observe these fossils and we can see the limbs at different stages of what one would expect from an actual fish fin to the different stages that leads to a human hand or a horse leg or whatever. So I don't know how you can kind of look at these fossils and not put them in a sequence that kind of demonstrates that evolution is the best answer, as opposed to you saying God created every single one of that as it looks.
Okay, let's use a little logic here. I'll try to help you out here. I agree. I agree. We can observe fossils. That does not prove that they're intermediate between anything. Is a tricycle intermediate between a bicycle and a car? No, a tricycle is designed to be a tricycle.
Do they evolve?
We see fish that have short limbs and then the fin. Maybe they were designed that way and they've always been that way. All we know is all fish today produce fish with limbs or fish with fins. We don't observe. So
are you saying that every single animal in the fossil that we see that has different stages of similarity and dissimilarity between a limb and a fin, are you saying each of them was created separately? Is that what you're saying? Because I can accept that. If that's what you think, fine.
Well,
but you're telling me that each of them are created separately because they did not evolve, they did not change, so they must have been created separately. That's what you're telling me.
You're trying to give the magical ability to fossils that no animal today has. No animal today can produce a lot of. There's a lot of animals in the ocean today that have fins. Show me one now, change what I want to see it alive, change into something with a limb. To find a fossil, you can't prove that fossil had any children at all. You sure can't prove it had children that lived.
You have said previously that you granted me billions of years, and now you're taking that back. Of course, evolution doesn't change from one offspring to the other. The mother doesn't change, doesn't give birth to something that's totally different from what it is. It takes time, and you have previously given me that 6 billions of years. So I'm not even sure what you're asking here.
Okay, are there animals today? You want time or more time? No. Okay. Are there animals today that have fins? Yes or no?
Yes.
Trillions of them, billions swimming around the ocean. Show me one, change it to a limb. No fossil could count. This is irrelevant what kind of fossils we find. You might have found something that went extinct. You might have found a fish that had a short.
Why doesn't a fossil count? I don't understand. If you're seeing evidence of a fin that's half a fin or half a limb, why doesn't it count?
I agree. You don't understand. Okay. In any court of law, finding a bone in the dirt and claiming it did something that no animal today can do would be laughed out of court. There is no evidence of any animal today with fins, slowly growing limbs. Why could this bone in the dirt do it millions of years ago? Why? How do you know it had any children? Who did it marry? You have to have two to make this change at the same time. There'd be trillions of changes to go from a fin, which you swim with, to an arm, which you grab and swing from trees with. Yeah, you're imagining. So I'm glad you finally gave evidence. You think fossils are evidence for evolution. You're way off track, but you're welcome to believe that.
I'm glad, Kent, you're not letting education get in the way of your ignorance. So look, Kent, I want to understand why you don't think fossils is evidence. You keep on telling me fossils don't have children. Well, they have parents. Right? They have parents. So we can see a progression of change as we look through the parental lineage, right? So you have said many times that fossils are not evidence, and I've stated that we have found evidence of intermediate transitional fossils that we put in a line between a fish and a tetrapod to, other animals with limbs. And we can see that at each different stages that there are more comparable to one and less comparable to the preceding one. Now, that to me is evidence that things changed over time because we had the fossils and we can date those fossils so that they fit within the evolutionary kind of time frame. You have said you don't accept these fossils. I want to understand why you do not accept fossils as evidence.
Well, I'm glad you finally admitted. You said, we find these fossils and we put them in a line.
Yes,
You just said
evidenced by dating methodology, as I said. Everything cross-confirms each other. Don't avoid the question. It's a very simple question now. Why don't you believe fossils are evidence? You've said this many times, but yet you try to push the question back on me. Why don't you believe fossils are evidence?
all fossils are evidence of, scientific evidence is something died. You
Is
cannot
that all you
prove.
think? Honestly, Ken, is that all you think? If I saw
Well,
a
Ian,
fossil
let's just
of
allow
a
Ken
fish,
to finish his
yeah,
thoughts on that
okay,
one, and then
Okay.
we'll hand it back to you. No worries.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead, Ian.
Sorry, go on.
If you find a fossil in the dirt or the rock, you could probably reasonably conclude it lived and it died. Could you prove that it was intermediate between two things? No. Could you prove it had children that were different than itself or came from parents that were different than itself? All we observe today, and a whole lot of animals are born every day, everything produces what anybody would say is the same kind. There are minor variations, but they all oscillate between two lines. There are limits, like the dog, small dog, big dog, they stay within limits. They're still a dog, and the size is limited. They can't get as small as a flea or as big as the moon. Sure, there are limits, physical limits, biological limits. So for you, you're now claiming that a fossil has the ability to do something that has never been observed. And for you to put them in a line according to how old you think they are is still ridiculous. That's not science. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ian.
So Ken, you are actually proof that evolution can go in reverse. So look, you still haven't answered my actual question about why you think fossils do not provide evidence. I have said that we have found fossils of animals that look like a fish, but their fins have what look like ankle bones. In other words, if you're a fish with fins, you don't need ankle bones unless you're actually using that fin to lift yourself out of the water. In other words, the first step to a limb. So there is a fossil there, and you're telling me that all you know about a fossil is that it lived and died. That's all you know. You can't tell by looking at the fossil that if it had a fin, that it probably lived in an aqueous environment. You can't tell from a fossil from certain characters, like for example, if we found fossilized feathers that it could fly. Depending on the environment it's fossilized in, if it's fossilized in kind of mud, that it wasn't, like I said, in a watery environment, are you telling me that all you know from a fossil is that it died? And I'm telling you that just based on many other factors, we know a lot about that fossil. We can tell what the animal looks like by piecing the fossils together. We can tell from his limbs how it lived. Did it live mainly in the water? Did it live on land? We have found fossilized remains of its food in its stomach. So we know whether it ate vegetables, seeds, nuts, or whether it kind of ate other animals as well. There are lots of things that we can tell a fossil besides that it dies. So I challenge you, Ken. You have said multiple times that you don't believe fossils are evidence, but you've not given me any evidence as to why. And I've given you many examples as to why we know more than just that it died from looking at the fossils.
Okay. If you could show me from the fossil what it ate by finding contents in the stomach, I would agree. Yep. Does that prove it changed to something else? Animals today have food in their stomach too.
Its limbs does.
A little bit of crosstalk there, gentlemen. Kent, finish your thoughts, and then Ian, we'll throw it right back to you.
Sorry. Stop me when I interrupt. That's good.
I'm saying you finally gave what you think is evidence for these family trees that a protozoa or an amoeba of some kind turned to all these different creatures. This is what the textbooks teach. I'm simply pointing out, if your evidence that a protozoa can turn to biology teacher is a fossil that is partway between some of these, you cannot prove anything. No animal today is doing this. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Farmers for centuries have been observing animals make babies, and they always make the same kind. They count on it. The farmer counts on the cows having a calf. They count on it. That's all they get. They try to make variations, but they get limits. More milk, more beef, but they get limits. So you want to believe, because you found a fossil that has what you consider look like ankle bones, therefore it's turning into a limb. That's not science. That's a religious belief. We see fish today that have short limbs before the fin grows, and they use them just fine. Some use them for walking on land and walking on the mud. But it's not changing to anything else. When they have babies, they're the same kind, got the same bones, nothing changes. It's not turning into a limb bone. You believe, by imagination, SpongeBob style, that it changed over millions of years. I'm saying these charts are pure propaganda. No fossil is going to count as evidence for evolution. You believe all the animals and plants have a common ancestor, don't you? And the evidence is fossils? Come on. Do better than that.
one more time, Kent, because I
And
just
then you're
don't
going to
have the
quit?
patience.
Yay! Go ahead.
No. Well, no, it's just because you're not answering the question. Look, I don't have the patience or the crayons to kind of explain this to you, so I'm just going to try one more time. Okay.
Okay.
So you said that you don't accept fossils. What I'm saying is we have fossils that show a transitional step from anything. You can choose whether it's a limb for a fish fin moving to a limb, or dinosaur claws moving to wings. Choose whatever it is. There are multiple intermediate steps of fossils. From what I'm understanding from you, Ken, is that you're saying that every one of those fossils, given that that's not variation, that they're different enough that your belief in evolution is that those are not variations. You're telling me that every fossil that we find that may have a slight difference compared to the fossils that we find that preceded it, you are telling me that God created that fossil specially.
I
Is
did
that what
not
you're
say
saying?
anything.
So
I did not say
Tiktaalik,
anything.
is that evolved from a fish, or is that created specially?
I would say many of them may have been created specially. I don't know. That's beyond science. What we observe with science is limited. Okay? Science cannot explain a lot of things. It's only what we can observe and study and test. I think the existence of billions, maybe even trillions of fossils, if you want to count the microscopic stuff like found in various layers of material around the world. I think the very existence of fossils is evidence of rapid burial. No animals today is turning into a fossil. When they die, they rot. We got a possum on the road up here. He's not going to turn into a fossil. He's going to rot. The very existence of fossils is evidence, A, that they lived, B, that they died. We don't know they had any children, but we know they died under conditions to turn them into a fossil. I think Noah's flood would explain that just fine. There are fossils by the billions around the world. They're not showing any change. You can arrange them in some kind of fictitious order and make it and believe that that's evidence for evolution, but it's not. It's evidence that it died. It's evidence screaming at you, Ian, that there was a flood. God's word is true.
Do you believe that there are fossils found in other types of environments? For example, sand dunes, dry sand environments, volcanic ash. Do you accept that there are other types of fossils that are not fossilized from any sort of watery environment at all?
You'd have to define the word fossil. There are things that are mummified. There are things that are petrified. There are things.
Fossils, they're rock. It's rock, bone-shaped rock.
Right.
Mineralized
If you get
bone.
Right. A fossil, most fossils are indeed formed in sedimentary rock, which is perfect to explain the flood. Petrified clams like this one in the closed position is evidence that
what about the fossils that are not in sedimentary rock? So what I'm asking is, because you talk about the global flood, fine. Let's say you believe that, fine. What about fossils that are not found in sedimentary rock, found in volcanic ash layers, found in sandstone, where it's basically dry sand environment? There's no water there at all. Do you accept those fossils? Like, what do you think about them? Are they caused by the global flood? What happened there?
Well, that's why I said at the beginning, you'd have to define what you mean by fossil. If it's a preserved remains of an animal, they can be preserved in dry volcanic ash. They can be preserved in a sand dune.
It's rock, Ken. It's rock. The fossils are mineralized bone that's now become rock. Whether it's in a sand environment, in a sedimentary rock, or a volcano, they're not alive. There's no mummified skin in it whatsoever. They're rock.
Are you saying that an animal can be buried in a sand dune and turn to rock?
Sandstone, yes.
It can. Does it have to have water to change the minerals into a fluid that'll go inside each cell?
Most fossils are found in sedimentary environments, because that is the most what's the word, efficient way, I guess, of creating fossils. Yes, but that's not saying every single fossil is. What I'm hearing from you, Ken, is you believe every single fossil is found in that particular environment, and then you concluded it must have been a global flood. I'm pointing out there are many fossils that are not found in aqueous environment at all, not even in sedimentary rock. How do you explain that? Fossils that are found in dry sand, fossils that are found where volcano ash is falling down. Was there a volcano that's blowing up underwater? Like, how does that kind of work? And don't forget, we're talking about sedimentary, volcano ash, sedimentary on top again. And I've heard you kind of explain this by saying there was a flood, was receded, a volcano blow up, then there was a flood again. I've heard you kind of make some really, let's be honest, pretty stupid explanation. So I just want to kind of hear from you right now. Are there fossils that are formed that are not sedimentary, and if so, how?
Well, I think evolution is very stupid also, since you want to slip to ad hominem. But listen, I said I think nearly all fossils were formed in sedimentary rock. I couldn't prove all of them were, You can, yeah, as I said, things can mummify. That's why I said at the beginning, define the word fossil. Sure, some animals could die and be preserved in volcanic ash. They could maybe be preserved in a sand dune. We buried our pig in a sand dune a couple years ago. Let's dig it up, guys. See if it fossilized, okay? What we observe is animals die. Most are not preserved at all. The fact I simply said at the beginning, before you went way off track, like you always do, is there any evidence of any of these animals that we're finding? Is there any evidence of any animal today producing babies that anybody would consider a different kind? Where's the evidence? Why do you give the magical ability to these bones in the dirt?
No, the
They
answer
can
is
change.
no.
Animals today can't. What now?
And I agree with you. The answer is no. An animal today, or even in the past, is not giving birth to another animal that changes a different kind, because the word kind does not exist. It exists in your mind, but it doesn't exist scientifically at all. Look, Ken, it's really interesting.
Donnie, one point at a time. Here's the definition of species from the dictionary. A group of organisms of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes. Similar type, kind, sort. What do you mean the word kind doesn't exist? You have a dictionary? Look it up. K-I-N-D. It exists. It's a word. They're basic kinds, okay? God said they'd bring forth after their kind. Do you have any evidence this didn't happen? No farmer today will tell you. Every farmer says that's all that happens. You plant corn, you expect to get corn. But you believe corn and cows are related. That's not science. That's all. I wish you guys could admit you have a religion. There are 10 varieties of crows. Man's putting these categories on them. The crow doesn't care what we call it. When the crow looks for a mate, he looks for another crow, not corn. He wants to mate with a crow. That's all we see. They bring forth after their kind, exactly like God said. You're supposed to be giving me evidence for evolution. You finally gave one, fossils. I clearly disproved that. No fossil could be proven to be producing a different, any change.
Nothing of the sort. You never answered any of my questions. So look, it's pretty much beating a dead horse here. So I'm going to move on if it's okay with you, Ken, unless you want to kind of get some last sentences in or whatever. You can have the last word, then we can move on.
I would like to see the evidence for evolution. Fossils do not count as evidence for these family trees that they show. No fossil is going to say we are evidence of these changes between the different creatures. We have humans and we have pine trees, and they have them related back to a common ancestor. This isn't science. No fossil could possibly show that. This is where your imagination kicks in. You believe this fossil was changing and growing an ankle bone. Okay, that's not proof of this change. It's your imagination. What's your second best evidence besides fossils?
Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of things. I'm going to straight to my slide that I have around kinds, if that's okay. I had some stuff around geologic layers. Okay, look, my initial plan for this debate was to kind of ask you, Kent, to provide one evidence of creation, because, you have in the past said that if evolution is true, then if evolution is false, creation is true. But I think you've admitted that even if you prove evolution is false, that does not mean that creation is necessarily true. So that's fine. I'm not going to go into that, and I'll actually talk about some evolution. But I just want the audience to understand that in this debate, Ken admits that even if he disputes or proves that evolution is not true, automatically young Earth creation is not automatically true. In fact, it's just something that he still needs to prove, and he's actually admitted he can't prove young Earth creation. So I will accept best case that we can't prove evolution, but we can also not prove young Earth creation. All right, so I'll accept that as if that's where we kind of get to. But yeah, so look, I just want to now I want to talk about kinds, because you kind of brought this up as well, Ken. And I'm glad you're having fun, Ken. I must just say I'm actually having quite a lot of fun as well. So it's
good.
It's always a good debate when you can have a bit of a laugh and a chuckle afterwards as well. All right, so Ken, there is one thing that it's always been bugging me. Like, I know you've always said, animals bring forth after their kinds. I had a look through Genesis, and I can't remember exactly what part of Genesis that is. I might just have a kind of look at it now, but it was the first few chapters of Genesis, right? And I kind of heard this kind of also debated in your debate with Ken Rock, I think last week. So I'll go back to, I think, Genesis 21 to 25, that kind of stuff. You probably know this off by heart, but I don't. So when God created the animals, as far as I understand, so I read kind of number 22, he says, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let fowl multiply in the earth, and in the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth after his kind. So God himself said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind. He also said, let the beast of the earth and the creeping thing of the earth and the cattle of the earth bring forth after its kind. When I read that, Kent, to me, a kind is not a dog kind or a bat kind or a butterfly kind or whatever it is that you have kind of said in the past. To me, a kind is a living creature kind, because that's what the Bible says. The Bible says it brings forth the living creature after its kind. So ergo, if that's what the Bible is saying, the Bible is implicitly or probably explicitly admitting to evolution, because it's saying here's a living creature after its kind. So living creature always begets another living creature, and it just so happens that as it begets that living creature, it expands out to the many different living creatures we have today. I'm actually reading from the King James version of the Bible here, and that's what it says. It's actually talking about the sea with the swimming creatures after its kind. I mean, to me, the swimming creature is the kind, because that's what it says. And then it will have this fishes and the whales and all that kind of stuff that evolves from it. But it's not a whale kind. It's not I don't know, a perch kind or a salmon kind. It's living creatures or swimming creatures after its kind. So it's just something that struck me, that you're using a definition of kind that, to me, that's not what the Bible says. And if you accept that, it's the very beginning. If you accept that, then you're also accepting you're accepting evolution, because living creatures can become all of this. So over to you, Kent.
Okay,
Oh,
go
thank
ahead.
you. What you've demonstrated is man is putting classification systems on
This
them.
is from the Bible. I'm reading from the Bible. It's not even
Donnie,
my
Donnie,
Ian, I just want to make sure Kent now has time for his response.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
sure. Yeah.
I did not interrupt him. Okay.
Oh, I apologize.
So shut his mic off. Okay. Now, you have demonstrated, the Bible says they will bring forth after their kind. Man puts the word kind on all sorts of things. There is the animal kind, where we would say a cow and a hamster are the same kind. They're both mammals. Carolus Linnaeus made up a classification system: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And we classify animals. That's the way we like to do things. Okay. The animals don't care how we classify them. Okay. But we do. So God said there would be animals, the creeping things. That would be, I would consider, insects or something. Now there's a whole variety. You can subcategorize those into many different thousands of varieties of insects. There's about 8,000 kinds of animals that walk on land that would have to be on Noah's Ark, according to bearmonology.com. There's the bird kind. But within that kind, there's a lot of other varieties of those. So yes, I accept the idea that man has put classification systems on them. God said there's going to be the flying kind, and within that, he made thousands of different varieties, and they never changed anything else. The crows always make baby crows. That's all we've ever observed. Crows are not related to hummingbirds. Now, we consider them the same kind. We call them both a bird, but that's a modern classification system that man is putting on the animals. The hummingbirds do not look for a crow to mate with, and vice versa. They know what their kind is. Evolutionists may not know, but they know. The animals know what their kind is. There is a cattle kind. So it's a simplification in Genesis chapter 1 of basic categories, maybe giving the family or the genus, or the class or the order. Again, I don't think God cares about our classification system. We've got kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Maybe God has 4 or 10 or 2,000. I don't know. But you're still way off target. You're supposed to be offering tonight evidence for evolution. All you are is you're picking at creation, picking at the Bible, picking at the flood.
We need to understand kinds first before I talk about the slide here on kinds. And what I'm saying is that you are interpreting the Bible, and it's not what the Bible is saying. If I read out exactly what the King James, it says kind. It doesn't say anyway. So let me read out number 21, Genesis 21. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, no S, kind, singular, and every winged fowl after his kind, his, singular, kind, singular. There's singular words here. And God saw that it was good. God, I'm not interpreting that because he doesn't say their or kinds with an S as in plural. What I'm saying is that God created a winged fowl kind, which means that then that speciates to many different kinds of birds. You are interpreting that with your whole classification and putting in what God or the Bible did not say, that God took an extra step and actually created multiple wing fowl kinds. It doesn't say that. It says after his kind. It's singular. So it's one kind of wing fowl which I presume, if that's what you believe, means that you actually accept evolution, that it actually, evolved to many different kinds of birds. I'm reading from the Bible that you've actually highlighted there. There is no plural in that word at all.
Wow. First of all, again, for the 30th time, you are way off track on the topic for the debate. You're not giving evidence for evolution. Picking at the
If you
Bible
can't
is not
answer it,
evidence
we
for
can move on.
evolution.
That's fine. So I just want the
Okay,
audience to understand that I've pinned
Donnie,
Kent down.
he's interrupting me. Donnie, I don't interrupt him. I let him blabber.
I'll
Shut him
even
up
go
when
on
it's
mute.
my turn. There you go. Thank you, Donnie. Okay. Would you agree the whales, God created the whales, and they show no interest whatsoever in mating with the bird kind? We can at least agree that the whale kind and the cattle kind and the bird kind don't show any interest in mating and are not even capable of mating and producing offspring. So yeah, we at least have 3 different kinds, which seems to be some kind of genetic barrier. Whales can't breed with birds. Now, I think it's obvious to anybody reading this, he brought forth the waters, great whales, plural, and there are about, 40 different species of whales, and they don't show any interest in mating with the other varieties of whales. Waters brought forth abundantly after their kind. So I think that could be, anybody would, and a freshman law student would say, Your Honor, he brought great whales and they bring forth after their kind. He must have made 40 kinds of whales and they're still bringing forth after their kind. Every winged fowl. How many different winged fowls are there? Several thousand. And they're still bringing forth after their kind. But then, this isn't evidence for evolution. You guys want to desperately get away from trying to prove your religion and pick on my religion because you don't have any evidence for your religion. Ian, where's the evidence for evolution besides fossils, which is only proof something died? It is not proof they changed into something else. Where's your next best evidence? Go ahead. Shut my mic off.
Okay. Yeah, look, I'm trying to be respectful and not cut you out. It's sometimes difficult when, that the interesting thing about this whole debate, Ken, is you have a tell. Like, I know when you're lying. I can tell. And that is basically every time you open your mouth. Okay, that's basically your tell.
Donnie,
hey, so
that's
look.
an ad hominem. Donnie, all he's got is ad hominem tonight. Do I want to say you're ugly and you cut your hair funny? Come on, let's stick with the
I agree.
evidence.
I am ugly and I cut my hair funny. I stipulate that that's true. So let's move on. Okay, that's fine. Nothing.
And let me jump in here, and gentlemen, for the last 10 minutes of discussion before we get into audience Q&A, there's been definitely some moments to remember, some jabs here and there. Let's really utilize the last 10 minutes. Ian, I know you have a couple more slides to go through, so if you wanted to move on to the next argument, feel free to do so.
So I know Kent thinks it's a digression, but I really wanted to understand what he meant by kind. I'm going to be generous to Kent, and I'm going to accept what he has erroneously complicated the Bible, because to me, the Bible doesn't say this. The Bible talks about whales kind, plural, great, that's fine. But it talks about singular, fowl kind, living creatures kind. It doesn't say creatures, it doesn't say there, it says his, and it says kind, not kinds. That's my interpretation, reading the Bible exactly as it is. But I just assume that, okay, Kent actually, what God really meant was it's multiple kind of animal kinds. So I'll just assume that that's right, and I'll kind of go with this. So, all right, let me just pull my notes out again. Just give me a second, guys. All right, so on here, and I'm just assuming, Kent, at any time stop me if I'm saying something or I'm interpreting what you have said in the past incorrectly. But here is what I think Kent thinks is a dog kind or a canine kind or whatever. So some species that sit within the dog kind are the red fox, the gray fox, the Arctic fox, the Maine wolf, the gray wolf. All right. So my first question to Ken is really, are these the same kind? Do you think that this fits in the canine or the dog kind? So I try to keep it easy and something simple, just so we can level set and the audience can understand, what Kent's perspective is, and I'll argue from that perspective.
I think I would agree that probably these are all considered the same kind. That's not the purpose of the debate tonight. You're still off topic, but yes,
this is
I
biological.
think. Okay, if you threw in a rose and a ladybug, would you think they're the same kind?
Well, since kind does not exist, no. What I will agree is that there are different species. Correct. I agree with that. Well, I'm using the scientific definitions of the word. There's no scientific definition for kinds, but using what I think you mean, I agree 100%. They are different species.
Do you believe the red fox and the gray fox and the Arctic fox are different species but are still interfertile?
Actually, I don't know the fertility of some of this, interfertility of some of these, but I do agree that they are different species, yes.
Okay, if it could be proven they're interfertile, they are interfertile, by the way, would that demonstrate that the word species is a useless word? But
No,
define species. What exactly is a species?
yeah. So remembering, if you believe in the worldview of evolution, everything is a progression. Okay, so I just want you to understand, and I try to make this point at the very beginning, that we have two different worldviews. My
Right.
worldview is evolution is true, and it's not a belief. I accept it as fact. So evolution is a progression. So it makes 100% sense to me that if two species are relatively close to each other, then there is a higher than average chance that they can produce offsprings. If they're a little bit more divergent than each other, then maybe they can still produce offsprings, but those offsprings are itself interfertile. And if they're further and further away, then they cannot produce offspring. There's no hard and fast rule on what a species is. The way I kind of like to think about species is basically it's the probability or the likelihood of it sharing genetic material with one another. Obviously, breeding with one another is a way to share genetic material. And if a species is too far away from each other, it can't breed. I'm not the person that kind of states that all species are infertile or not, because as I said, evolution is a spectrum. Depends on where you are in the spectrum, kind of dictates whether they are fertile, interfertile, or whatnot. So anyway,
Okay, let's
Right.
hand
Let
it
me-
back to Kent for equal
me
time.
answer.
Go ahead, Kent.
This is a classic example of showing clearly that the word species is a flexible word. Exactly where do we get to know where the foxes have become a new species? And who's making this decision? Is there a committee someplace? Are the foxes voting on this? Okay, so the word kind is the same thing. It's pretty obvious if they can interbreed, they're the same kind. Whales and pine trees cannot interbreed, they're a different kind, okay? Whales and sharks cannot interbreed. Whales and humans. There are obvious limits, and you're saying the word species is not a solid, a simple word that can be easily, clearly defined. Nature magazine, biological species, a group of organisms that can reproduce with one another in nature and produce fertile offspring. Then why do we have 37 different varieties of foxes, most of which are interfertile, but are classified as 37 different species? Your word species is the problem. That's the word that's no good. It's nebulous, flexible. What's a species? You don't know. You think because we can put 35 varieties or 37 varieties of foxes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think you've just agreed with me. Are you saying that this definition of species is that they cannot produce fertile offsprings? And then the example you gave was 37 foxes that were infertile. Like I'm sorry, isn't that exactly the same point?
I think the 37 varieties of foxes are probably nearly all of them are interfertile.
So they're
think
different species.
They have bred lions and tigers and got tigons or ligers. They're certainly a different species.
Yeah.
Lions and tigers are a different species.
A little bit over talk. Okay,
Yep.
Kent, finish your sentences. Ian, we'll throw it back to you. Don't worry.
Yep.
You can Google it. Lions and tigers can interbreed. They make a liger or a tigon.
Yep.
And so, but yet they're classified by scientists as a different species. I'm just saying, where's the rock solid, where's the limit? Would you agree lions and tigers, since they can interbreed, are the same kind of animal?
Like I said before, it's hard for me to accept your word of kind because it's not a scientific word. What I will say is that they are different species, but they are divergent enough that yes, if they can produce an offspring, and it's probably extremely unlikely, but if they can produce an offspring, then it's probably one that's infertile. Now, if they were closer, evolution says if they were more closely related species, then possibly they can create offspring that are fertile. But I'm just getting to your point because I don't understand. You gave the example of right there of fertile offsprings, and then you said the 37 species of foxes were infertile. So that means you admit that there are 37 different species of foxes. It's not the same kind, they're different species.
Go ahead, Kent.
I said the 37 species of foxes are interfertile. They can produce offspring.
Interfertile.
Wait a minute now. A lion and a tiger are classified as different species. Why? They can interbreed. Why are they? Who decided to call them a different species?
So this proves my point exactly. What I was saying before was evolution is a spectrum. Now, if I look at the different 37, I didn't realize there's 37. I mean, but if I look at even the foxes on the screen here, they look so similar to me. In other words, they're not that dissimilar from each other that they're probably fertile. I get it, right? But you look at a lion and a tiger, they are to me dissimilar enough that if they could, and you know, obviously they can because you've given me ligers and tigons and whatever, but it's rare event and likely the offspring is not fertile itself, because you can even just a 5-year-old could see that there are two species that are not as dissimilar as the different 37 different species of foxes. As I said, evolution is a spectrum. Depends on how close you are, and that's why you can't put a hard and fast rule in a definition of species. It's all about the probability that it shares genomic material from each other. If they're close by, it can share more. If they're further apart, it's unlikely they share. There's no hard and fast rule. Anyway, let me kind of go on to this kind of thing, because I think
Well, let's make sure that Kent has a chance to respond. Go ahead, Kent.
Oh, okay, sure.
Ian, if there's no hard and fast rule for species, why can't I say there's no hard and fast rule for kind, but there's obvious limits from observation? All we've ever observed is cows produce cows. Nobody's ever seen anything other than that. You wish to believe cows came from an amoeba or a protozoa and are related to a ladybug. That's your religion. Why can't you guys see it's a religion? It's not. We don't observe cows. There's 400 breeds of cows that man has developed. Most would not survive in the woods on their own. Most dogs would not survive in the woods. But they're still the same kind of animal. That's obvious to anybody with a kindergarten IQ. They're producing after their kind. Why would you want to believe that you are related to a ladybug and a cow? Because of fossils? You're supposed to be giving evidence for evolution, and you're avoiding it like crazy all night here. Where's the evidence for your religion? Why do you believe you're related to a ladybug?
Sorry, just take myself off mute. All right, we're not going to get much further here. The only difference between my definition and your definition is your definition is rooted on the infallible word of the Bible. And what I've kind of tried to demonstrate is depends on how I interpret kinds. I can interpret kinds as living creatures. You interpret it differently. That's fine. But how's that infallible when there's different interpretations of the Bible? So anyway, I'm going to move on, because otherwise we're just going to stay. Okay,
Donny, no more hit and run. I get a chance to answer, okay?
Okay.
My definition of kind is founded on what the Bible says. You are correct. And it's also founded on science. Everything we've observed in the history of humanity tells us cows produce cows. No exceptions. But you wish to mix in a silly religion that cows are related to ladybugs. You put them on your chart here as if they're all, we draw a line between them. That's what's not science. It's science to say cows produce cows. That's all we've observed. The Bible says they bring. So my definition of kind is based on the Bible. You are correct. And it's based on science, observable, testable, demonstrable science. We observe cows make cows. My neighbors have a bunch of them. 2 got in our field today. Ours got over the cattle guard today. I had to chase them back. There are 400 breeds of cows. They had a common ancestor called a cow. It wasn't called an amoeba. So you want to mix your silly religion into this and claim that this family tree is science. This is not. Each of these is an individual tree. There might be 40 varieties of ladybugs. I don't know. I don't care. And they might have had a common ancestor called a ladybug. But you want to draw a line and say ladybugs and humans are related. That's what's not science. You don't get it. I know you don't get it. You probably never will. I'm sorry for that, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. Look, as I kind of said at the very beginning, your whole basis of what you believe is basically based on words on paper. That's all it is words on paper. It's based on what's written in the book, words on paper. You can't show scientifically that that's correct, but you believe what's written in the book. I get it. That's fine. And look,
okay. Donny, let me answer.
Go ahead, Kent.
Your whole definition is based on lines on paper. You draw a bunch of lines on paper connecting all these animals. All you have is a bunch of lines on paper connecting these are all related. I have words on paper that say they bring forth after their kind. That's all that's been observed. You have lines on paper connecting the shark and the fin and the fern together. Why would you put a fern, a starfish, a shark, and an octopus going to a common ancestor? All you have is lines on paper, Ian. You don't have science to back this up.
So
Go ahead.
Do you understand how the lines on paper could? I mean, basically, if I flip the question to words on paper, it's just somebody, apparently God told that person by divine inspiration to write it on a piece of paper. That's fine if you believe that. That's great. But the lines on paper are there because we have genetic evidence, and that's just one line of evidence. It's phylogenetics and other different types of evidence that kind of show that this organism is closely related to this organism, which is a little bit less closely related to this and this and this. And that's how we draw the lines on paper, because it's not just we made up the lines, it's based on actual scientific evidence. Whereas your words on paper is because God magically poofed the words in someone's head and he wrote it down that way, as I understand it anyway.
Donny, he just gave his second evidence finally. He believes fossils are evidence for evolution. I don't think that's logical at all. Secondly, he said now genetic evidence. If there is similar genetic evidence, I got a cramp in my thigh. Just a minute here. Magnesium deficiency. Okay. If there is genetic similarity between different animals, does that justify claiming a common ancestor? Or could it be a common designer? Could it be they have a common need to do different things? Animals need muscles to move the bones around. Oh, okay. So I bet they've got a genetic code to make muscles. I bet the arm, which works really good to be able to twist different directions, might need 2 bones here and only 1 up here. The humerus, the radius, and the ulna. I think a lot of animals have that similar structure because they have a common designer. That's not evidence for evolution. He has chosen to interpret it for his religion as evidence for evolution. But neither do fossils are not evidence for evolution. They're evidence of a biblical flood, I would say. Genetic similarity is evidence of a common designer. It's not evidence. You've given 2 now after an hour and a half. Where's the best evidence for evolution? Fossils, genetic similarity? Come on now. All you have is the lines on paper and a religion that you're clearly demonstrating.
So biological evolution, we talked about kinds, and we're now talking about genetics, which is a perfect segue to what I was going to kind of talk about here anyway. So look, I'm trying my best to explain it to you, Kent, but I can't help you understand it, okay? So we've agreed that you think that this is all the same kinds, and look, using my definition, I think they're all sharing a common ancestor. So we have some basis of agreement here, common ancestor versus kind, that's fine. Next step here are the chromosomes between each of them. Gray fox 66, Maine wolf 76, 78 for the gray wolf, 50, 34. So these are the chromosome numbers between them. My question to you, Ken, is are they still the same kind, given that they have different, each of these that you have said before are the same dog kind or canine kind, have different numbers of chromosomes? Do you still believe that these are the same kinds?
I'd have to do some checking on those. That's a good question. Are the gray fox and the red fox interfertile? Are animals today, do lions and tigers have different number of chromosomes and still can make a baby? I don't know. Good question. Let me take a picture of the screen there, and I will do some research on that and find an answer for you if you want one. Are they the same kind of creature? Okay.
So just from my perspective, they are the same. They all come from, I think, is it Canada? They're all from the same family, genus, etc. So to me, yes, they all share the same common ancestor. The question really is, from your worldview, are they still the same kinds, knowing that there are different chromosomes? And you said basically you need to check on that or whatnot. That's fine.
No. I think those you have on the screen are all the same kind. That's why I asked you, would you throw in a rose and a ladybug and call them the same kind? What if you find a ladybug has 34 chromosomes? Would that mean it's the same as?
I don't even need to know the number of chromosomes. Chromosomes in evolution is not the determining factor of whether they are the same species. It's clear that they are different species, ladybugs and any of these animals that you see here today. I'm just asking what you think is the kind. So you've agreed that this is the kind. Maybe the chromosomes have been different. That sounds like that's not really relevant to whether it's a kind or not. That's what I understand you're saying. That's good. That's fine. Okay. So the other thing I kind of wanted to say is that if you look at the red fox and the Arctic fox, 34 to 50, and I have the source of the paper listed here for people. I don't want to go and have a look at it, but you can type this out yourself and find it, and you can read the paper itself. There is evidence that between the red fox and the Arctic fox, there is between 6 to 24, and it's just how they define the chromosomes. That's why there's a variation in number. But there are 6 to 24 chromosome fusion events that occurred between the red fox and the Arctic fox. So my question is really simple. We have what you are calling animals in the same kind with different number of chromosomes. 2 of these animals also have chromosomal fusion that occur that you're still calling the same kind. So my question is, even though there's different numbers of chromosomes and that there's evidence of chromosomal fusion that occurs between these animals that you're calling the same kind, I call it a common ancestor. Does this mean that you still think these are the same kind? Now, obviously, in the evolution perspective, it's a common ancestor. So I'm using the term a bit synonymous with what you're calling a kind. But the question is, does it matter in your worldview?
Well, if you want to get into chromosome fusion, what we consider a chromosome, the chromosome is unbelievably complicated. If you wish to call it a fusion, and then that means some material was left out, 2 are fused together. I've got plenty of stuff on chromosome 2 fusion if you'd like. Okay, humans normally have 46 chromosomes. I think it's difficult to prove fusion. And if there is Arctic fox and red fox and gray fox have what you are calling a fusion, the fusion needs a lot more study than you think. If 2 cars collided and stuck together, does that mean they're evolving together? So I think the human chromosome, if you want to get into that, Let's see. I get more
No,
stuff on fusion.
I'm just specific on foxes. I'm not even. I didn't want to touch anything that you've kind of covered before. That was what I kind of said to Donny. I want to talk about things that were different, audience hasn't heard of before. All I'm saying is that we.
And I
have
just want to jump in,
animals-
guys. We're going to have to really start wrapping it up. We are coming at the hour and a half mark. And so, Ian, if you had any final points that you really wanted to make
Yeah,
before we get to...
let me go through one other slide. I won't pause and ask Kent questions, so he can take the time to absorb what I'm saying, and then I'll let you kind of maybe ask your questions or rebut me at the end of it. I was going to keep it interactive, so there's going to be multiple points here, and I don't want to hear you say one topic at a time, because I was going to give you the opportunity to talk about it one topic at a time. But time permitting, let me go through next slide and then ask my question, and then you respond. Does that suit? Yes. Okay.
Ian, as long as there's not too many topics, why don't you take a
No,
minute to run through your next slide, and then we'll give Kent a minute.
This is the
response
example
too.
of chromosome fusion, and what I'm saying is that the number of chromosomes, or the fact that there are chromosome fusion, does not, in my mind, Kent's belief, it does not change the fact that it's the same kind. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Now I'm going to take bear, or the bear kind, as an example, and here is what phylogenetically we see is the bear kind. So obviously, from here, the brown bear and the polar bear are more closely related to each other than, let's say, the brown bear to the black bear, the sun bear, the sloth bear, which are also, so you'll see the different kind of splits here to an ancestral bear. Obviously, I believe this is the common ancestor to a bear, and Kent will say that's the bear kind. Okay, so that's where we're different. It's really just semantics, right? And I'm using the same argument that I used for Ken. I kind of say the number of chromosomes between this group here, which is all these bears here, sloth bear to brown bear, there's 37 chromosomes. Now, if we go back further and then compare it with the spectacle bear has 26 chromosomes. What's interesting, though, is that if you look at the chromosome numbers and compare it to the other types of bears on the top left, we can see evidence of chromosome fission, not fusion. It's where the chromosomes split apart to become 1 to 2 chromosomes, right? There's examples of multiple fission events. We go back further, and what we can see is there's 21 chromosomes in the giant panda, and we can see additional chromosome fissions. And all I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to make the point that it doesn't matter the number of chromosomes in what Kent defines as a kind and what I call as a common ancestor, and it doesn't matter whether it's a chromosome fusion or a chromosome fission. That can occur, and it occurs in the lineage that is within a certain kind, be it a dog kind or a bear kind, or it's a common ancestor of a dog, or canine, I should say, or the bear kind. And where I was going to go with this was to kind of say, if that's the case, then let's look at chimpanzees, gorilla, and humans, where there is.
Okay, you know what? What we'll do is stop there. We'll allow Kent to respond to the bear points you made, and then if we do have time, we'll wrap it up with this.
I'm just. The conclusion is, if you accept that, then why don't you accept this? Because it's exactly the same. That's all I was trying to say. It's exactly the same. Different chromosomes, fusion event. Why wouldn't you accept this as the same kind?
Well, real quick, and as I'm looking at the photo, Ian, you know, it's difficult as a moderator and a host. I want to remain as neutral as possible, but I feel like there have been some unnecessary jabs. Kent, go ahead, respond. And I think what we'll do is just move into audience questions after this. So Kent, go ahead.
He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He said the chromosome number doesn't matter. He talked about the different foxes, and they're clearly the same kind. Their foxes are the foxes, okay? There are 37 varieties of foxes. So how, now they normally, I'll do some research. Can they all interbreed? I don't know if all 37 can. Can humans and chimpanzees interbreed? That's actually been tried. And no, they cannot. They're different kind. So I think what we've observed is the fission events and fusion events would be imaginary. You'd have to assume it's a fission or a fusion. You don't know that. If an animal has 46 chromosomes and another one has 23, you're assuming that they broke apart. Maybe they were designed that way. Are the 8 kinds of bears interfertile? I don't know. The question is not the chromosome number, as you said. The question is, are they interfertile? God said they will bring forth after their kind. Can they bring forth? Well, apparently they can't bring forth. If they can't bring forth, they're obviously a different kind. Maybe they used to be, and it did split. Could the Great Dane and the Chihuahua bring forth? Probably not. I think in the laboratory you could probably mix the sperm and the egg and get a baby puppy to start growing. But they're different varieties of the same kind. They're called a dog. So he's not given any evidence. He's gone all over the planet tonight, everywhere except providing evidence for his theory, which is the purpose of the debate. So I win. Okay? He didn't provide any evidence. Fossils are not evidence for evolution. Genetic similarity is not evidence for evolution. It could be just as much evidence of a common designer. I could point out Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint have millions of identical lines of code. Therefore, they evolved from Morse code. That's the conclusion he's reaching. Because these have similar lines of code, therefore they came from an amoeba. Come on now. Therefore, they have a common designer. I win.
So I just want the audience or any future debaters of Kent to understand that when Kent talks now about evolution, what he actually means is biological evidence. I was painstakingly clear at the beginning that I accept Kent's definition of evolution. I was surprised that he changed it to only biological evolution, which is fine. So I think any future debaters of Kent, I think we now can accept that when Kent says evolution, he's only talking about biological evolution. He doesn't care about the rest. Now, I understand Kent doesn't grant that, but he doesn't care about the rest in any debate. So as long as everyone understands this, that there's no flip-flopping and all that kind of stuff, that's like when Kent says evolution, because I accepted your 6 definitions and I was going to argue based on that definition. You've changed it to biological evolution. That's fine. In the future, that's what we mean. That's okay. Look, I don't really have anything more.
Go ahead, Kent.
Sorry, go on.
I've said for decades, I accept microevolution. I think it's a lousy word. We shouldn't use it. I accept there are variations within the kind. This has been observed. What you shared with the dogs and the foxes, I think anybody would consider microevolution. It's a variation of an animal that has hair, a nose on the front, a tail. It's obviously a dog kind, okay? But you want to go to macroevolution where they change to something else. Do you believe a fox came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago that cooled down and got rained on and turned to soup, and the soup came alive and made a protozoa or an amoeba, and it slowly turned into a fox? Yes, you believe that. That's not science. That's what you can't get through your head tonight or any night. It's not science. All you have is a religious belief. You make these lines on paper. You believe these lines on paper are science and backed up by evidence. I believe the lines on paper right here are science. God said they'd bring forth after their kind. That's all we've ever seen. Wow. Science is observation, study, testing, demonstration. I think we can demonstrate cows make cows and dogs make dogs. I think those lines on paper, those words on paper, are scientifically accurate. But I'm not demanding that mine be taught. You are demanding your lines on paper be taught as if it's part of science, and it's a religion and nothing more.
Gentlemen, Ian and Kent, I think what we'll do is wrap up the discussion there so we can get into some audience questions. Clearly, a lot of people looking forward to this showdown. We've got over 300 people in the live chat and enough questions to keep us busy until same time tomorrow. But what I'll do is put a timer on the clock. And once the timer goes off, let's say about 20 minutes of these questions, and then we will wrap it up. Okay, so Kent and Ian, let's move right into questions. So let's see here. We'll start right at the beginning. A lot of
them will be for me, but that's quite okay. I'll give it a good go.
There is a healthy amount of questions for the both of you,
good.
So this should be good. Okay, here we go. First question that comes in. Carrie Pahel.
I love it.
Question for Dr. Chen. Where are the missing links from ape to man? Wouldn't this open the door for a feeding frenzy? Why do we have both ape and man?
So that's for me, right? So look, I'm going to channel my inner Aaron Ra here and basically say ape man is apes, but I think I know what he's saying. He's saying a common ancestor of Homo sapiens that are probably more ape-like, and where are the missing links from that to man? I think that's what he's saying. Okay, so I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but if I were to kind of read it literally, then mankind, humans, they are apes. So it's like saying, what's the difference between a dachshund and a dog? So they're the same. All right, so we do have missing links between a common ancestor that is more ape-like or monkey-like to man. We have fossils of Australopithecus, which I know Nephilim Free likes to call it, Australopithecus, I should say properly, which is a bipedal ancestor to Homo sapiens. Oh, you've got it up there, so perfect, thank you. Bipedal ancestor to Homo sapiens that had a lot of features that are both monkey-like or chimpanzee-like, I suppose, and also human-like. Then as you kind of progress into like Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, and all the different types of Homo being human type species, you're starting to see a progression that is more and more what we're seeing is modern humans today, and less what we're seeing is ape-like in the past. So we do have much evidence of this missing link. It's not as if there's no evidence at all. There are lots and lots of different Homo ancestors fossils that we have found. Hopefully that's clear.
Thank you for the response there, Ian. Kent, floor is yours.
I would again point out, all he said is we have fossils. You don't know those bones you found had any babies that lived. Why don't we see any of the apes today produce something other than their kind? All we see is chimpanzees make baby chimpanzees, orangutans make baby orangutans. There are no exceptions, none. It's an imagination. It's a religious belief to think they can change. The ones today can't change, but they could in the past. This is fairy tale stuff. It's all it is a video game. Okay. And then you said, and I quote, we do have missing links. Stop and think about that. If it's missing, you don't have it. You don't have any missing links, okay? There are no links. There's no chain. You guys are deciding there's a chain between humans and apes and lemurs and tarsiers. They're not the same. They don't show any interest in mating with each other. And they certainly can't produce viable offspring. So they're not the same kind. Humans and gorillas are a different kind. God made them, different kind. That's all we've ever seen. Science is what we can observe, study, and test. Evolution is not part of it. There is no such thing as a missing link because there's no such thing as a chain. There is no chain between all the animals. You have a bunch of lines on paper connecting them to common ancestors. All you have is a religious belief. This is pure fiction. This isn't science. They even get brave enough to say all the bacteria and all the humans are related to a common ancestor. Last universal common ancestor, Luca. Okay. That's a science. This is imagination. This is religion. And they push it off in our textbooks as if it's science. And I think it's not only dumb, I think it's criminal to do that to the kids. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Ian, you get the last word. Question was for you.
Yep. So all I heard from Kent was an admission that all the fossils that we have found that we are saying is the missing link. And what I'm saying is missing. I know, Kent, you're smart enough to know that I don't mean it's missing as in it doesn't exist, but it is a progression from a particular creature in the past, a common ancestor to humanity. So Homo sapiens. So all I heard from Kent was an admission that each of that was created separately. Because after all, if evolution is not true, then the different features that we are saying has evolved must have been created separately. So that means everything from Australopithecus and all the different types of species of Australopithecus through the different types of Homo sapiens, they have all been created separately by God. They all happen to be extinct, so 90% of it disappeared somehow. But basically what I hear from Ken is anytime there's a difference in a fossil, which evolution will state is an evolving from one form to another, Ken is saying that cannot happen because God created that separately. So as long as Ken, that's what I'm hearing that you're saying. All these creatures are created separately, ex nihilo, as it is by God.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. This time it's for Kent. So again, we have a healthy amount for Ian and also Kent. So thank you for the $10 super chat and support. And the question is, doesn't the accumulation across loci, so locations in the genome basically, of frequent heritable changes of minor effect under selection lead inevitably in the long run to the increase in the rates of large effect mutations? Oh, actually, Kent, let me just unmute you. Okay, you're good to go, Kent.
Okay, I think what they're asking is, are these changes that we see, and certainly we see changes, okay? But under selection, there's two kinds of selections. There's natural selection where nature decides this one dies. It doesn't have enough hair. It's going to freeze to death, okay? Or where man decides, natural selection or artificial selection, okay? I agree, under artificial selection, man has decided to breed cows that give more milk or cows that give more beef. But they're still cow. All we've observed is the variations that man is able to produce with intensive trying is limited to 400 kinds of cows and 339 breeds of dogs. What we've observed is there are limits within the dog kind. And, wrong slide here. Okay. So yes, what we see is the variations, the change, the accumulation of these changes has only led to varieties that are limited. 400 varieties of dogs, still dog. If you wish to believe something else, that's fine. But that's why I'd like to point out, Your Honor, this is nothing but a religious belief. They've been trying to get smaller dogs. None of them would survive in nature. There's a limit. Big dog, little dog, probably close, but none of them would survive. They're never going to get a dog 8 miles high or ½ inch tall. But there are animals a ½ inch tall. So apparently it can happen. So yes, I agree. The accumulation of loci of frequent inheritable changes under selection can lead in the long term to the increase in the rates. I don't know what he means by the rest of that. I think the accumulation of heritable traits can lead to 339 breeds of dogs. I don't believe that's evidence that dogs are related to mosquitoes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much there, Kent. Ian, floor is yours.
Yeah, so we keep hearing from Kent, different variations, etc. We've also heard from him today that he doesn't believe that evolution would make any major changes, and ergo, the simple conclusion to that is that God must have created all these species separately. That seems obvious to me what Kent is saying. I wouldn't mind at some stage, whether it's this debate or someone else's debate, or maybe in a question later, how Kent explains the number of species or kinds that would have to be on the ark, given that he's just admitted that God created all these transitional forms separately. But like I said, that's different, and that's just maybe just a similar conclusion of what Ken is talking about in terms of many mutations leading to different characteristics, etc. So that's just what comes to mind.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Kent, question was for you, so you get the last word. Go ahead.
Well, science is what we can observe. We observe variations, and they can be selected for. We observe, we run into a brick wall. You never get outside of basic dog kind or cat kind or cow kind or whatever you start with. Whatever you start with, you're going to end up with 5,000 generations later. They've been breeding bacteria in the laboratory for a long time. All they get are bacteria, nothing else. I think we've demonstrated clearly tonight, Ian is a representative of his religion. He's maybe a high priest even in it. I don't know. But he has a religion is all he has. We don't see anything other. We don't see these lines on paper that he claims are part of science. It's just simply not.
Thank you very much, Kent. And okay, moving on to the next question. We've got a super chat from Dustin. Thank you very much. This one's for you, Ian. So Dustin says, thanks for hosting another Kent Hovind win. Ooh, he's coming at you, Ian, on the Best Debate channel. Appreciate the kind words. Question for Ian. How does evolution determine morality? Go ahead, Ian.
This is actually quite a complex kind of question to kind of answer. So we need to define first, and I'll make some assumptions before I can answer this, but we need to define what is morality. I presume Dustin is also kind of presuming that God is the person that gives you objective morality, and there's a whole bunch of things that I can kind of talk about that. But if I take it just as a very narrow question as to how does evolution help humans basically evolve to where we are today? So humans are social creatures. So like dogs and other kind of pack type animals, we survive better if we get along with other people. And it's not Christianity, but many other different religions have come up with what we call the golden rule. Treat others like how you want to be treated yourself. It's not a specific thing to Jesus. Other religions have come up with this rule itself, and it's an obvious common sense kind of rule as well. So if I use that example as morality, and we kind of think that, for a species to survive better, it needs to get along with each other. Morality to me can be put down to something very basic, like we treat others how we want to be treated. That means we don't kill people unless we want to be killed ourselves. We don't lie unless we want other people to lie to us. We don't cheat unless we want to be cheated ourselves. So to me, just that golden rule itself is basically why that has evolved from evolution, and the basis of that is because we need to get along with other people in our species to survive and thrive. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you very much for the response, Ian. Kent, floor is yours.
Well, what he's given is a very flexible, misty answer. Is it wrong to kill and eat your neighbor's baby? Well, the zebra, apparently the lion doesn't think so. He thinks it's fine because the zebra is his neighbor. He likes to kill and eat the neighbor's baby all the time. Why would it be okay for a lion but wrong for a human? Where is the line? How do humans determine morality? What exactly is what you've given as an answer that sounds amazingly like it came from the Bible? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Whoa, that sounds like something the Bible says. And I've asked atheists all over the world, and evolution is a simple question. How do you tell right from wrong? Where's the line? Is there a standard? Is there a book someplace? We've got law books that tell the laws about driving on the highway. I can read the law. Somebody decided this is our highway. This is what you do. You go this fast and no more. Okay. Where's the law for, is it okay to eat your neighbor's baby? The lion does it every day and thinks it's fine and can't wait to do it again tomorrow. Where is morality come from? Is it genetic? You said it's obvious common sense. Well, I don't think common sense is very common anymore, but we got people now believing they come from a rock. So where, to get along, where is this common sense come from? Where's the line? How do you tell right from wrong? I'd like a list of what exactly would you consider wrong?
Yeah. All right. So there's 2 points I kind of want to address. It's my question. Is I can answer that, Donny?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So there's 2 things here. Basically, you said a lot of things, one topic at a time, Ken. But I'll kind of address 2 of them. Right. So the first one is regarding that example on the line. Evolution is all about propagating your offspring. It's about your reproductive success kind of going forward in time. Right. So obviously a lion is a carnivore. It eats meat to survive. So it's got a balance, eating the zebra, yeah, like you as well. And it's a vegetarian cow, so I get it. It is quite funny. So a lion has to eat the zebra because it needs to survive to propagate and have children, baby lions kind of going for in the future. It doesn't care about the feelings, even if it does understand what feelings are. It's not going to care about the feelings of the zebra because it's all about survival. So that's why it eats the zebra. Zebra's not going to like it, all right, but it's got evolution mechanisms like speed and stuff to escape it. So that's what evolution is all about. It's about propagation of your genes going forward. The second point around, oh no, I've lost my train of thought here. I can't remember. Sorry, I was too busy thinking on the first point. I can't remember the second point. Anyway, I don't know. Sorry, I'm lost.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you both for the responses. Dustin, appreciate the support. Next question comes in from Tanya Brown. Thank you, Tanya. Question for Ian. Why impose limits on evolution? Why can't a cow evolve a different bone structure and utilize a huge food source like the sun to be as big as Texas?
Okay, so I didn't say there was any limits in evolution. I was very explicit in saying that Kent thinks there is a limit, and my question to him was, point me out what those limits are. I did not say that evolution had any limits. All I said was evolution acts on what it has to create something that is a better fit for survival. Now, I'm not a geneticist or a biologist or a botanist at all, but my understanding is plants plants going back way in time absorbed a specific bacterium that allows it to photosynthesize. So if I make a whole bunch of assumptions here that are very unlikely, but if a cow were to absorb a similar bacteria that gives it the ability to photosynthesize, this happened way back in the past when it was a single cell organism. So we evolved from one that basically absorbed a bacteria that created mitochondria that allow us to basically that fueled the energy in our cells, and we went down a certain path of animal kingdom. And another bacteria did the same thing, photosynthesis, and basically went down the path of plant. What Tonya is asking is why can't a cow develop something similar? So if we make the assumption that it can absorb something similar, which is now extremely unlikely because it's much too complex, and we assume that it evolves bone structures, for example, that can support the weight of something that's the size of Texas, there is no limit to what evolution can do as long as it's the best fit for the environment. I would contend, though, that there are limits like physics that will not allow a bone that is as big as Texas to basically support its own weight. And I would also kind of say, when I even look at ecology or the environment, there is not enough food to basically feed a cow that is as big as Texas. So there are other limits that's not genetic as well that you need to consider.
Okay, Ian, thank you very much for the response. Kent, over to you. The floor is yours.
Well, we saw a classic flip-flop. He said there are no limits, and then he said there are physical limits. I bet he's a Democrat. Let's see.
Physics.
Okay. Yes. Physics impose limits. Genetics impose limits. Dogs make dogs without exception. There's a limit. But you put lines on paper connecting a dog to a ladybug. That's not science. That's religion. Why can't you admit it? There is a genetic limit that dogs always make baby dogs. It might be a variety, maybe a dog, wolf, coyote, maybe they had a common ancestor, but it's obvious the banana is not part of that group. A 4-year-old will tell you that. God said they bring forth after their kind. Darwin muddied the water by calling it a different species. So I think that you said the question, why impose limits on evolution? He does not believe there. He thinks an amoeba, a single-celled creature, amoeba, bacteria, protozoa, whatever one you want to start with, came from a rock, which then evolved into elephants and bananas and humans and starfish. He puts the lines on paper connecting them, and he calls that science. Good question, Tanya. What he has is a classic example of a silly religion, in my humble, totally unbiased, and correct opinion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Ian, quick final word, and that way we can get to some more questions. Go ahead, Ian.
It's like I have to repeat myself basically. So when I say that there is no biological genetic limits, I'm talking specifically about biological and genetic limits. I even took great pains to explain that there are other limits that are not biological, like in physics. Ecology, for example, like does the environment support the amount of food that a pig or a cow the size of Texas can eat? And that evolution acts on what's already there. So it's like I have to go and explain everything again back to square one with Kent. I'm not going to bother, so I'm just not going to kind of talk about this. But Kent, you have got to demonstrate why you think there is a limit, because I'm saying there is no genetic limit. So you're the one that says there is one. Please provide the evidence next time you have a debate on this.
Okay, thanks for the final word. Next question comes in from One God Is Now Here. Thank you very much for the super chat and the support. And of course, the question, which is for Kent. So, question for Kent. Will you define and then ask Ian to define the scientific method?
Thank you. The word science means knowledge. It comes from the Latin word "scire," which means to know. What do we know? And it's the amount of knowledge that man has accumulated over the years grows all the time. We now know new things. We can now make calculator watches, and we can now make computers, and now send rockets to the moon. They couldn't do that a while ago. So we've accumulated knowledge. Okay? The scientific method is knowledge gained from observation and experiments. We've done experiments. We've observed cows produce a variety of cows. 400 now breeds we now have. Most wouldn't survive on their own. We've observed that's all we ever get is cows. So I think the scientific evidence would say there must be a limit somewhere. Cows can only make cows. They now have miniature cows, size of a dog. They now have huge cows that weigh 2,700 pounds. We find fossil cows that weighed 4,400 pounds. So apparently things were bigger in the past. I think science, what we can observe from these giant cow fossils and giant beaver fossils 8 feet long and giant dragonfly fossils, I think we've observed something was different in the past. Things were a lot bigger. Many things were a lot bigger. I think that the obvious interpretation would be that fits what the Bible says. God made a perfect world and now it's been destroyed by a flood. I'm not asking for that to be taught as science, but science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Scientific method, make an observation, develop an idea. Why does this happen? Think of experiments, predict what will happen, observe what happens, modify the prediction if you need to, okay? Cows produce cows. There must be a limit. Keep breeding them. Keep trying, keep trying. Guess what? The cows turn out to be cows. They're always cows. Seems to always work. Science would tell us evolution doesn't work. Go ahead, Ian.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kent.
so
Ian,
the question was define a scientific method, and all I heard from Kent was a definition of retrodictions, where he looked at an observation and he explained the observation. That is not the scientific method. Look, I'm not a scientist, but this is quite basic. It's something that I learned, back in grade 7 or whatever. So, as I understand, a scientific method is you formulate a question. What is the question that you're trying to answer? Then you come up with a hypothesis. What do you think happened to explain the question that you're trying to answer? And then with that hypothesis, you make a prediction. And this is key, Ken. The prediction has to be novel. It has to be different. If all your hypotheses are making the same prediction, you have no ability to determine which of those hypotheses is the best one. So you make a novel prediction that can be tested. Then the next step of it is test that prediction. What does the data say? Does the data come back and say, whoa, actually what you thought would happen actually happened? That's a big tick on your hypothesis. That's saying that could be correct. Or does the data come back and say completely wrong? In other words, that prediction or that hypothesis is incorrect. And you keep on doing this analysis until you get a sufficient level of enough data points that actually confirms a prediction or hypothesis until you are confident that that hypothesis is correct enough to be elevated to what's called a theory. Now, in between that, obviously, you test that, you get a peer review, you get other people to kind of do that test just to make sure that, the things that you're doing to test that prediction is correct. But that is the scientific method. What you've described, Ken, is I looked at an observation, I've observed that observation, and holy, I must be correct because I've explained it. That's not how it works. You've got to predict something that's different and then get the data to see whether that prediction comes true or not. That's it.
Okay, Kent, you get the final word. Go ahead.
I predict cows will always make baby cows. I predict that. I defy you to find an example anywhere in the world of any kind of cow that's ever done something other than that. I predict if we could test it, we could ask all the farmers in the world, all through history, have you ever seen a cow produce a non-cow? No. Did your cows always have parents that were cows? Yeah. Did the baby turn out to be a cow? Yeah. Let's collect all the data from all over the world. My neighbors have a whole bunch of cows. I'll go ask them. Do they ever make anything other than a cow or calf? Nope. Then, if you have a hypothesis that a cow came from an amoeba, I think we can reject that hypothesis because we never see that. You guys want to draw a line on paper between a cow and an amoeba. I think we can reject that line. That's not science. Then let's peer review it. Let's get all the people who raise cows in the world. Everybody do a test. Check me out. Everybody, all the peers, people who are in the cow business. Guy up the street's got 1,000 cows 6 miles from here. I'll go ask him. Have you ever seen a cow produce a non-cow? How long have you been doing this? 34 years. Wow. What about your grandpa? Did he make cows? Yeah, they always made cows. So I think we can reject the evolution hypothesis. It's not even a good hypothesis. It certainly is not a theory. And it's way miles away from being a fact. You don't accept evolution as a fact, as you said earlier. You believe in evolution. Why can't you admit you believe it?
I said I accepted it.
It's not science. Science, well, we can observe. I think we can reject the evolution hypothesis starting right out the gate. It doesn't go anywhere. Nobody's ever seen any of this. You got to rely on fossils, something in the past. Doesn't happen today. You got to rely on genetics. That doesn't, all we see is the limit genetically. You haven't given any evidence for evolution tonight. The burden of proof was on you. You lost. But you can come visit Dinosaur Adventureland anyway. We'll give you a tour. Come on down. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thanks for that,
gentlemen. Good job keeping the Q&A fun. So because we are so close to the 2-hour mark, we still have 3 super chats to get through, which means let's have a power round, gentlemen.
Yeah,
let's say no more than a minute response each. We'll get through these and then we'll wrap up this debate to remember. That's for sure.
I do tend to waffle, Donnie, so I'll do my best. But shut me down if it's just say shut up. And
no worries. You're both doing good. So here we go. Next one, $5 super chat from SWE. Thank you very much for the support and question. So it's a question for you, Kent. How does Kent explain that the inner ear and lateral line systems in vertebrates all arise from a common embryonic precursor?
Well, the question has a built-in assumption. I don't know that that's true. If it is true, again, that would be evidence of a good design that works. I think you'll find almost all the people that make cars, whether it be Chevy, Ford, Fiat, or Subaru or Honda, start with a system where they build the frame first, then they add the components to it. I think all the car manufacturers probably have a similar system of construction that's necessary. And the last thing you do is, put the chrome on and put it out the door. So I think if there are similarities, if indeed the inner ear has the lateral line systems that he's talking about, that'd be evidence for a common designer. God designed it that way and it works great. I'm losing hearing in one ear, but hey, it worked great for 70 years, but did pretty good. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Ian, go ahead. You got a minute.
I have to say, I really love SWE. She not only asks really smart questions, but she asks questions that I also struggle to understand as well. So I'm going to take a pass at this anyway. So good job, SWE. Thank you very much for showing me up for not actually understanding the question as well as I should.
SWE definitely always has those technical questions. So I appreciate the questions. And next one. Okay, Mr. Archaeopteryx, $20 super chat. Thank you very much. And Mr. Archaeopteryx has a question for Kent. Kent, what method do you use to determine if two different organisms are the same kind? For example, a cheetah and a tiger. Should we ask a 5-year-old, ? If you have no method, please stop saying it's the same kind. Kent, go ahead.
Well, the Bible says very clearly, if they can bring forth, i.e. produce babies, they're the same kind. A dog and a sunflower cannot bring forth. They're a different kind. Where exactly the line is in every situation, that's what science is supposed to try to do. But see, guys like Ian want to draw lines on paper connecting a sunflower with a dog. They believe they have a common ancestor. That's not science. So I guess I would use, the Bible says, if they can bring forth, they're the same kind. But man has put animals in different categories. They're all the time changing them. Let's move this over to this species, and let's move this into this category. The whole classification system is artificially imposed on the creatures. You can turn all the animals in the world loose in the woods. They will seek out their own kind. The possums will seek out another possum to mate with. They don't care about the armadillos or the squirrels or anything. They know what the kind is. Some of our modern scientists can't figure it out. Wow, let's connect them. Okay. They know. The sunflowers know they're the same kind as other sunflowers. So apparently they're smarter than most of our evolutionists who think they're all the same. So no, I'm not going to stop saying it's the same kind. Sorry, Mr. Archaeopteryx. You can't make me stop saying it. But that's okay. You can come visit Dinosaur Adventureland too. Come on down.
Thank you very much, Kent. Ian, over to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, all I'll point out is that in this debate now, we couldn't even get Kent to really kind of define what a kind is. He'll keep saying it because he has no definition of a kind, and he'll swap whenever it suits him. I gave one that I thought was a literal interpretation of the Bible and exactly what it said. Kent does not agree with it. But yeah, I thought it was quite clear. A kind is living creatures. A kind is swimming creatures. That's it.
Thank you, Ian. Kent, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Well, the Bible later defines that more specifically. It talks about the heron after her kind. Interesting. How many kinds of herons are there? 72 species of herons. I would say they're the same kind. They're called a bird. I think they do not seek out to mate with the clams or the seagulls or the fish. They seek to eat the fish. So God said there were heron kind, locust after his kind, bald locust after his kind, beetle. So it does give more than that. And again, Ian, you're slipping. You're going back to picking on the Bible, which is not the purpose of the debate. My job is not to defend the Bible. Your job is to defend your religion of evolution. You failed miserably tonight. Hope you sleep well, but go ahead.
Ian, over to you.
I love it.
Actually, no, not it was.
Yeah, I was going to say. I was reading.
It's getting late for me too. I need some food and something to drink. So we really got. We'll be quick. We got 2 more super chats, and then we are. It's been a lot of fun, and we've had a healthy mix in the chat too. It's been very lively in the live chat. Good solid mix of creationists and evolutionists. So everybody's come out to enjoy this. Bubblegum Gun, $5 super chat for Ian this time. In evolution,
dogs came from wolves.
Sorry, yes. One of your best friends here, one of your number one fans, Ian. So in evolution, transitionals are not optional. So can you name us of just one transitional specimen that existed between the gray wolf and the Dalmatian dog? So you predicted it, Ian. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, well, he basically has one story that he always says, so that's all right. Hey, I'm going to answer this with my Kent Hovind hat on. And that is the gray wolf and the Dalmatian is the dog kind. Now, I'll define that as a common ancestor of Canidae. But, if I answer this and, trying to steel man, Kent's position as much as possible, they're the same kind. In other words, it's whatever the ancestors are between that more from, the gray wolf to the Dalmatian. Dalmatian? Is it Dalmatian? Dalmatian, I think he means. Yeah. I can't show you because that animal's probably dead. But it is an animal that morphed between the two because they're all from this dog kind. And that's just Kent's position.
Kent, anything you'd like to add?
Keep that hat on. You'll get smarter. Yeah.
Oh, I was being kind to you these days. Now I'm going to have to.
I know. I'm trying to help you. I'm being kind. I'm trying to help you. All we've ever observed is 339 breeds of dogs by the American Kennel Association. Probably had a common ancestor called a dog. That would not justify drawing a line on paper between a dog and a ladybug and a fern. You guys see the obvious varieties of dogs and then conclude, wow, there's no limit. Dogs and ladybugs are related. They're not, Ian. They're not. They're the dog kind. God said they'd bring forth after their kind. That's all they've ever done. So I say, the question was a good one. Can you name just one transitional species just between the gray wolf and Dalmatian? You can't even do that. I think, though, I would say probably they're related and are both the dog kind. But I'm not, the burden of proof is not on me to prove where the border is for kind. The burden of proof is on him to prove there's evidence for that line on paper connecting the dog and the ladybug. Where's the proof of that? Where's the science? There's no science behind it. It's a religion. That's all.
So hey, I just want to kind of say,
you get the last word.
I just want to kind of say, I know throughout this debate, Ken has mentioned many times ad hominem attacks and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to say, Ken, I'm actually not insulting you. I'm just describing you. Look, I've got nothing more to kind of say. No, that's it.
Ian, you just had to sneak another one in.
Because Ken was sneaking it in. I slowed it down, but Ken snuck one in, and it's just we're having a bit of fun. Ken and I are just having a bit of fun.
Ken, if you'd like to give a jab back, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken. I can take it.
All right, keep putting my hat on, Ian. You'll get smart.
I think by the time we complete the inevitable debate trilogy between you two, you'll both be best friends. I'm sure. I can see it.
Okay.
So we're now down to our final question for the night, at least in terms of super chats. There's enough questions here for the next 24 hours. So we're going to wrap it up with this one, Lou, which I reworded his question a little bit. I think it was a little blunt, the one that came in. So Ian, this is a question for you from Lou. Appreciate the super chat. His question for you is, what is the evolution explanation to how the first organisms engaged in sexual reproduction?
I'm going to have a go at my layman's understanding of this one. Hopefully it might give you a broad overview, which any of you that are really interested can go and search on Google or, ask a biologist friend or whatnot, because that's not me. So evolution is all about propagation. It's all about, reproduction. It's all about, passing on your genetic material to the offspring. So if we start off with a single cell or a simplex creature, sex to them was basically fission. It was basically splitting apart, and that's how they reproduced. Now, at some stage, the organism, when I mean organism, I mean it loosely and not that it was controlled. The organism realized that if you were to share different genetic material, then that would lead to variations in your offspring that would enable it to better survive in different environments. So that splitting became a joining. And as you kind of think of that concept as it used to split, now it's joining, eventually evolution will look at different ways that joining will become, much more efficient. And that becomes a sexual, the I don't know how to say it, the male and the female sexual kind of process, etc. Now Ken's holding this up. I hold this up as well. So all it is evolution. If you consider evolution as propagating your genetic material to the best possible variation possible, that's how I kind of see how sexual reproduction occurs from, a fission event to a fusion event, and then the efficiency of that fusion event leads to the sexual reproduction as we have today. That's, like I said, non-biologist answer, but that's how I understand it.
Appreciate the battle of the props tonight. Ian, you're Superman there, and Kent, you're SpongeBob. So
that's you. Yep. That's you, Donny.
One day we'll have to have Superman and SpongeBob or SFT duke it out. So Kent, over to you if you had a response. Oh, Kent, my fault. Let me unmute you. Okay, starting now. Go ahead.
I appreciate the Superman, Clark Kent. Yeah, okay. What he gave was just imagine that first cell was learned to split in half. I think almost all the animals today, if they split in half, they die. Mm-hmm. But for millions of years, the bacteria could split in half. I'd like to ask, why would any animal want to reproduce, which makes more of its kind to feed? It puts more stress on the environment, more stress on the food supply. Why didn't any of the creatures simply evolve to live forever? Why didn't that first cell just live forever and be happy? He'd have the whole world to himself. All they're doing is making more mouths to feed. Evolution has no explanation for this. What is the evolution explanation? How living organisms engaged in sexual reproduction? All they have is imagination. Well, just imagine. Guys, it's going to make more mouths to feed. It's going to make a worse problem. That's not going to help. Go ahead.
I take what you just said, Kent, to basically interpret that to say you actually agree with incest. All right, because if an organism is allowed to live forever, you're basically saying that's the same genetic material that stays on and on and on. And as we know, it is the variation in genetic material that causes different mutations that allows it to survive in different environments. If all you've got is the same organism that's living forever and the environment changes, you're just going to wipe out that organism. So evolution will choose the best possible path that allows survivability of those organisms, and that is the ability to reproduce and share genetic material so that the mutations in the offspring will have different likelihoods to survive when the environment changes. Basically, what you said, Ken, is everything stays the same. It's in stasis, or you agree with incest because you don't want genetic material to kind of change. That's what I heard.
I'm sure that's what you heard, because that's what you want to hear, okay? First place, no. The first single cell that learned how to split in half, is that incest? They're both identical genetic material. A lot of them are still doing that. A whole lot of bacteria and protozoa and amoebas are still splitting in half. Is that incest? What if they get back together? Whoa, now it's incest. But splitting in half is okay. No, I don't believe in that. So then you didn't answer the question. Why didn't any of them just evolve the ability to live forever? Then you don't have the problem. You don't have to reproduce at all.
I did
just
answer.
eat, drink, and be merry. There's no reason for reproduction except they're going to die. And so God made them, God designed them to bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. Said it 24 times in the first 7 chapters. Ian, he's trying to get a message across to you. They always bring forth after their kind. Nothing else ever happens. And personally, I'm glad he created it the way he did. I'll leave it at that, okay? Talking about sexual reproduction. Did a great job, God. Thank you. Okay.
Yep, no arguments, yeah.
Okay, Ian and Kent, thank you very much for an entertaining debate. I'm a little nervous to give you some last words, but I'll take the chance. Last words. Let's keep it cordial, professional. Let's wrap this epic debate up on a good note. So some professional final words. Ian, let's start with you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I enjoyed it. Thank you for moderating, Donny, as well. Thanks for pulling me up. I couldn't get all the jokes I wanted out. Thank you to Kent for his time as well. But the only thing I kind of say is, like, I asked Kent very specific questions. He wasn't able to answer. Maybe he can't. Maybe he doesn't know. That's fine. Let's just admit that. So the one last thing I kind of wanted to say is that, look, a real man wouldn't body slam their wife. So I just assume you identified as a woman.
Ian, that went too far. And
what? I didn't hear that either, so that's maybe good. Okay,
it's probably a good thing.
That's good.
And we were so close to wrapping it up perfectly too, but it looks like it was kind of drowned out anyway. So, Kent, we're going to give you the final words and final thoughts for tonight. Go ahead.
I also asked Ian many specific questions tonight that he did not answer. I think he clearly demonstrated evolution is taken on imagination. It's SpongeBob. It's a religion, which you're welcome to have. I don't care what you believe. But I resent having everybody being forced to pay that religion to be taught in the school system. What happened here? Okay, we lost our screen. Okay. I don't understand, Ian, how you or other evolutionists can't see design every place you look in nature. You really believe all these creatures came from for no reason. Nobody designed it. How can you not see a snail and say, wow, that looks like it was designed? You really think all this came from a protozoa? Nobody designed this. Ian, I wish you would stop and re-examine the religion you've chosen to believe in and say, wow, that's really silly. Maybe there's a God who designed this. And if so, maybe he made some rules. And maybe I'm going to be accountable one day. And yes, you are. And so am I. And I deserve God's judgment. But praise God, he came down to earth as a human and died for me. And he paid for my sin, so I get to go be his child. I'd like you to be his child too. I'd like to welcome you into the family. If you're willing to accept it, it's up to you. We'll see you Judgment Day. Okay? You really think nobody designed this? Yep, just happened by chance. Nobody. Okay.
Okay, Kent, thank you very much for the final words, final thoughts. Ian and Kent, thank you for the debate. And to this was a longer one than we usually do, so appreciate the time you've both given to us. Also, the audience, thanks for all the questions. And we had an excellent audience today. So tons of people share this stuff around. Thanks for tuning in. Stand for Truth out. God bless.
See you guys.